Your computer.
It's 9 o'clock. I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Price County Board of Supervisors.
I'm not even on.
First, we're going to have the invocation by Pastor Tennant. If everybody could please stand.
Yes, good morning. Let us pray. Father, today we ask for your goodness. We ask for your leading of your Spirit. Father, you said in your word that you're sovereign. So we acknowledge your sovereignty here today. We acknowledge you. You're the God of creation. We thank you, Father, as we put our hearts towards you. We'll listen to our heart, the move of your Spirit, the move of your word. We'll take you into acknowledgement when we make decisions. We remember, Father, that you have developed and created the Constitution of the United States, and we thank you today for our freedom as we stand here in our assembly in the authority that you have ordained, and we thank you for that today, and we ask you to bless this meeting. Let your grace and peace flow through our hearts. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Okay, please remain standing. Pledge allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We still need connections from Hodek, Kopish, Polachek, and
Yeah, getting there. You won't let me in. Here we go.
Can't find the off-on.
There we go.
It's Paul here. Gee. Sequence. Change screens.
what was I showing?
You were showing what's on the computer right now.
Okay, we're ready. And Michelle
Okay.
is remote.
I'm here.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. We have 13.
Well,
Oh, all of you hit the wrong button, I think. Now we got 13.
There we go.
Thank you.
No
okay,
problem.
roll call is done. Communications and announcements from board members. Do you have any communications? Announcements?
I have one.
Paula?
It's from the business meeting of the conference, the WCA conference. I just wanted to say that the resolution for the realistic definition of rural was approved. It was one of the 14 out of 17 that were approved. So thank you, Price County. I think that's going to go well. And already Tom Tiffany has asked, his office has asked for a copy of that. So that will be something he'll be touting next term.
Good. Us rural people won't have to compete with the big cities.
Yeah, we hope not.
Okay, any other communications or announcements? Okay, next is public comments. Tammy Hastings is the only one that signed up, so you come forward. State your name and where you live, and 2 minutes for non-agenda items, 3 minutes for agenda items.
Okay. Tammy Hastings, Town of Eisenstein. Just a couple of things as we are looking at the coming election, couple of concerns. I made a call to the Wisconsin County Clerks Association. I'd like to suggest to our county board that coming up in the future, we establish a Price County training manual. I don't know if many of you are aware, but our current clerk has refused to train in the new clerk. So she is now training in Rusk County. And if we could come up with a plan in the future, it would be very productive. So whoever transitions into that position could actually do that seamlessly. Additionally, the county clerk must reside in Price County and not be handling county business outside of the county in order to run the election. Regarding the library situation, I just want to add something that causes people to stop and pause when it comes to the 80%, 100%. And I don't know if that got stuck in executive, but I feel like the other supervisors are not representing their districts. This is a post by Rebecca Puel, and this is just to show why there's pushback on this. The post says, "No gays allowed because the Bible says so." The same book of the Bible also provides charging interest on loans, trimming your beard, selling land, eating shrimp, and wearing two different fabrics. So let's not pretend that the Bible commands it. You're just a bigot. First of all, that's the law. And when Pastor Tennant gets up here and he prays to open a meeting, the county is acknowledging that they do abide by biblical truth. So this is the law. It is not the truth in the New Testament, if any of you are up to speed on any of that. So not only is this false, but it's also contentious. So we are asking as county citizens to keep it at 70%, not because we don't put value in it, but we would like to see everyone acknowledged, not the greater good, but individually. And lastly, I would like to thank you all for the good job that you do. I know that this is very difficult on many of the decisions that you make. And so thank you.
Thank you. Tammy was the only one that signed up, so we'll move on to the next.
We have to sign up.
Mhm.
Pardon?
Usually call for people. I didn't sign up, but
Do you want to speak?
Yeah.
Anybody opposed? Go ahead, Jenny.
all right, inflation is affecting everyone. People are laid off. Now is not the time to make any tax raising decisions. I hope you have taken the library issue to the taxpayers, especially in your district, before you decide today. Going to 100% will cost about at least $105,000. No one in executive meeting asked what 80% would add. The Phillips director had to know they were overspending when they hired a full-time replacement, when possibly a part-time could have been possible, or maybe they could even share responsibilities. 3 full-time employees seems like a lot. And how much time does each employee actually work? I don't know if they're working full-time or not. So I hope you consider that when you decide.
Thank you, Jenny. Shirley?
I'm Shirley Smith. I reside in Phillips. I'm Shirley Smith. I reside in Phillips, and I want to speak in favor of better funding for all of the county's libraries. I'm particularly concerned that the people who speak against it make note of their hostility to the library director of the Phillips Public Library, and they aren't even people who reside in the area served by Phillips. I know you all know that healthcare is a major impact on all of the levels of government, and that includes libraries needing to be able to provide for their employees. Please consider funding at more than the minimum.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Oh, I just turned you off. Turn it back on. No, just. Yep. Yourself.
Hello, I'm Amy Abel. I live in the town of Ogama. I am the director at the Ogama Public Library, and the funding for the library has been a bit of a hot topic. I would just like to remind you that it does affect all of us. Right now, if we fund at 70%, the Ogama Library actually receives a decrease. because of the algorithms that don't take into account that we had 400 people showing up for our summer reading program just in August. So we're providing services that aren't in that algorithm. And we've heard a lot of people talking for or against how things are going in Phillips. Increasing it up to 80% would give us an increase of $1,000, which in our OGMA budget is actually a lot of money for us to work with. So just keep in mind that whatever you're voting for in the budget for the libraries does affect all 3 libraries in the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on. We have one presentation today, employee recognition by Laura Paulskill.
Good morning.
Morning.
We have about half a dozen employees who are celebrating anniversaries in the month of October. And if they are here, I advise them to stand up and be recognized when I call their name. And actually, I just saw Lisa out in the hallway walk by, so I don't know if she's around or not. But celebrating 1 year with us in October are Cole Richardson, who is a highway operator, and Ken Lighting, who is our airport operations technician. Celebrating 5 years with us in October are Paul Bilkey, a highway operator, Tanya Eccles, who is a correction officer, civilian dispatcher, and Tom Palachek, highway operator. Then our big one this month, celebrating 30 years with the county this month, is Lisa Walsasak, who is our clerk of court. So let's all give them a round of applause for their service to the county. Thank you.
Thank you all for your good work. Next item, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from September 17th, 2024. Motion by Hodek, second by Polachek. Any discussion?
I have one correction on page 1.
Jordan?
My name, not Jason's name. At the top. Jordan Spacek, not Jason Spacek.
Okay,
That's all.
all right.
Any other discussion?
I didn't want him to think there's 2 Jasons.
Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote for approval.
Right.
Oh, sorry. I was changing the names. Michelle?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay, yeah, you have any problems? Okay. Carries 13-0.
Okay, move on now. Resolutions on the amended agenda. Number 1 has been crossed out. We're going to bring that back at our next county board meeting. So we'll go on to number 2, outdoor recreation grant applications. Forestry and Parks and Buildings and Grounds Committee submitted this. I'm just going to read the therefore, at least most of it. Now therefore be it resolved that for the 5-year period 2025 to 2029, Price County hereby authorizes the Forest and Parks Administrator of the Forestry and Parks Department to act on behalf of Price County to submit an application to the State of Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources for any financial aid that may be available, and submit reimbursement claims along with necessary supporting documentation within 6 months of project completion date, and submit signed documents and take necessary action to undertake, direct, and complete approved projects. And then you can just read on, be it further resolved, etc. So I'll entertain a motion to,
We got a motion in a second.
okay, that's this one. Okay,
Yep.
we have a motion, Polachek, second by Hallstrand, to approve. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, go ahead and call for a vote.
Michelle?
Yes.
Thank you. Carries 13-0 for resolution 32-24.
Next item, resolution. Acceptance of Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources County Forest Sustainable Forestry Grant. Again, from Forestry and Parks Buildings and Grounds. Just going to read it therefore. Now therefore be it resolved that Price County apply for the WDNR County Forest Sustainable Forestry Grant Award in the amount of $48,000 and directs the Forestry and Park Department to move forward with the Sustainable Forest Project as outlined. Motion to approve by Spacek, second by Hodek. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Hodek?
I had a constituent talk to me about this. It would be the town chairman of Emory. He was, when I read this to him, he had no concerns about it, other than he was wondering if the whereas with the initial assessment found repair in the roads, blah, 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 in the town of Emory, if after that comma, the description, the legal description could be included after town of Emory for public transparency. The reason this is a concern to him is when this would be made public, then if he were to get a call on it, he would have no clue. Of course, he is my husband. He's the town chairman. So he was just like, I have no idea where this is. So if that somehow, if that legal description could be put in that part of the whereas town of Emory, it would be town 37 North Region 2 or 3E. We're not sure which one. He's not sure where it would be. Do you have any idea, guys? Nick? Jeff?
Where,
Mr. Chairman, I believe there's multiple locations that Joe planned on working on
Okay.
here. So it would be difficult to say one spot. I think he plans on using this in multiple sales that we're setting up for future roads, future
Okay.
timber sales out there. So it's not one location.
Oh, it's not.
No.
Yeah, I asked Joe that when I was
You did,
drafting this,
okay.
and he said it was hard to define exactly, because like Jeff said, there will be multiples.
Okay.
so is there a procedure for notifying the town chairman then? If something's gonna,
That
some work's
probably
gonna be
would
done
be
in his area?
Helpful.
That procedure is in fact in
Yeah.
place?
He can reach out to Joe, or Joe can reach out to him.
Right. And he will at this point, but maybe a note should be made when if this comes again, that the town chairman of whatever region you're going to be, what town, should be at least apprised of that. Just so he's not,
Blindsided.
blindsided. Thank you.
Okay,
I'll
noted.
pass that on to him.
Any other discussion?
Is this to
Richardson.
make roads to access to the county property? Is that what this grant is for?
It's fixing up some roads to give us better access and for setting up timber sales. down
And
the
this
road.
is 100% grant or a matching grant?
This is $48,000 that we're applying for, 100%. So
It is a matching grant, but the county's contribution is
zero.
in kind.
Yeah. No doubt.
They provide the labor and equipment.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote.
Yes. Thank you. Carries 13-0 for resolution 33-24.
Okay, resolution 4. 2025 Price County Highway Department road construction projects to be financed with short-term debt. This came from executive. Now therefore be it resolved that the Price County Board of Supervisors authorizes the executive committee to proceed with the implementation of financing 2025 Highway Department road construction projects in amount not to exceed $3.1 million to be financed through the issuance of short-term debt and to include such debt payment in the 2026 Price County budget. You want to explain this just a little bit?
Sure. So you would have seen a 5-year plan from the highway department that had about $2.6 million worth of projects on it. When we went through executive, we did discuss that in order to maintain our debt levy, we recommended the 3.1 be put on here, but the goal or the plan is to do the $2.6 million in projects. And what this will allow us to do during the 2026 budget is reorganize some of our debt if we would like to. So we just borrowed an additional $500,000 for a piece of yellow equipment over 5 years, which causes us to pay interest. Well, if you look at the 2.6 to the 3.1, when we get to the 2026 budget, we can continue to borrow the 3.1 like we did this year. So in this budget, you have 3.1. And instead of going down to 2.6 and then going back up when there's future projects, what we'll probably recommend is staying at 3.1, bringing that piece of equipment into it, paying it off early so you don't have to pay the interest on it. And there should be no impact to the future levy for that debt. So that's why this one says 3.1 million, even though you approved a 5-year plan of $2.6 million in projects. So it's up to this amount for the future budget.
Everybody understand? Kinda? And the 3.1 is what we did for this year's budget too,
Correct. So the resolution that you guys did last year would have been for all the projects we've been doing right now, and we're borrowing to pay those back, which is 3.1 million. So it's matching this year's borrow level for next year's potential borrow level.
Any discussion or questions? Go ahead and vote.
I'm a yes.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks, Michelle. Motion carries 13-0 for resolution 34-24.
Okay, moving on. Resolution 5, provision of general assistance services 2025, 2026, came from Health and Human Services Board. Now therefore be it resolved that the Price County continues its general assistance services program for calendar years 2025, 2026. Fiscal impact. It is anticipated that this resolution will be budget neutral over time due to the repayment requirement of the program. However, due to current economic conditions, this program could have a levy impact of up to $5,100. Additional expenditures beyond $5,100 will require further county board action in the form of an amended resolution. Motion by Kopish, second by Polachek. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll go ahead and vote.
Michelle?
Yes.
Carries 13-0 for resolution 35-24.
Okay, we'll move on to resolution number 6, request state funding to cover full costs of mental health crisis services. And this came from the Health and Human Services Board also. Now therefore be it resolved that the Price County Board of Supervisors does hereby request that the state of Wisconsin in its 2025 to 27 state biannual budget provide state general purpose revenue funding to cover the full non-federal share of medical assistance, community support programs, and crisis services. And be it further resolved that the Price County Clerk is hereby authorized and directed to send a copy of this resolution to the Governor of the State of Wisconsin, Wisconsin State legislators with a constituency within Price County, and the Wisconsin Counties Association. Just wait for the computers here. We'll look for a motion. Motion by Kopish, second by Hodek. Any discussion?
Just that
Go ahead, Ms. Hodek.
this was presented a couple Mondays ago on the Monday morning WCA legislative updates that they have, and this was presented at that time. that's when I brought it to the Health and Human Services. I think this is what we should do to support mental health
Yeah, I
issues.
agree. Any other comments? Okay, we'll vote.
Yes.
Thank you. Carries 12-1 with a no from Supervisor Hastings for resolution 36-24.
Okay, appointments. Council on Aging Advisory Committee, term to expire 4/30/2027. Joe Brack has volunteered.
I'm older than you think, Larry.
This is just informational.
No, it's a vote.
No, it's a
We have
vote.
to vote?
Mhm.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
No, it's a voice.
voice vote.
Oh,
Do we have to have a motion?
there is.
There is,
That's what's on, you know.
That's what's on there now. Yep.
Okay, motion by Hodek, second by Kopish to approve the appointment. All those in favor, aye?
I was just going, yeah, okay. I was just going to say that for anyone that had a concern that we had a county board member on that position from the north, we were looking for, the Council on Aging was looking for representation from the northern district of the county. And I mean, it's been ongoing. We've been looking for a northern rep for quite a while. And just in that midnight hour, there was one of the committee members had someone who had volunteered to sit on that from the north. And so when I contacted Chris, maybe about that, she contacted that person because we had Mr. Bratka who had offered, and he said he was not coming as a county board member. He is from the north. He thought it would be good that he would be there. It also would give him some insight to what's going on in the northern area for Council on Aging. The Health and Human Services Board thought that was great. We didn't have a name at that time otherwise. So when this person's name came up, like I said, Chris maybe did call that person, and in the long run, she really didn't want to be on there. So it just kind of made it easy. So the Council on Aging did approve Mr. Bratka.
Very good. Okay, we'll redo the vote. All in favor of appointing Joe Baratka? Signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, we'll go into the Committee of the Whole, Board Chair Report. WCA Conference Update. I went to the conference on 9/22 to the 24th. Sunday basically was just a get together. There was a procedural meeting, basically vote to approve all the resolutions that were submitted from the executive committee. And on Sunday night, I did get to meet Gilbert Brown and Santana Dotson from the Packers. That was kind of cool. Monday, there was all kinds of sessions. I attended one on maintaining order during meetings, on long-term care facilities, Department of Revenue updates, one on procedures for selling tax deeded land, and didn't really learn anything more than we already knew. It's still a big gray area. Another one was understanding roles and responsibilities of county government, and lastly, addressing housing concerns in various communities, specifically Washburn and Bayfield were talked about there. Governor Evener was there, Eric Hovde was there, and Tammy Baldwin did give a video presentation. Mr. Kopish or Ms. Hodek, you have anything to add? I know you two were there.
I'll go first. I'll go through what I did there, what sessions I attended. On Monday, it was a morning session having to do with when spirited debate crosses the line, what can you do? And this was put on by Atolis Law. And I was a little disappointed because they really didn't get into some of the issues of decorum and stuff that we sometimes have issues with. By the time they got to that, they ran out of time. So I was a little disappointed in that. But when I was at lunch, Andy Phillips asked me if I wanted to be in the afternoon sessions. And the afternoon session had to do with Parliamentary Procedure and Action, Part 1, attend a, whatever it is, county board meeting. It's some funny name. I can't
I think
pronounce
it's
it.
Wisconsin spelled backward, isn't
Yeah,
it? Something
Oh, is that what?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you pronounce it backwards.
Yeah.
Miss Knox and Squeeze.
Anyway, there were 3 sessions. So I got appointed as supervisor for District Number 3, and it was scripted. And so when things came up, we had to do our thing, and it was very interesting. So I got out of that what I didn't get out of the first session. So I enjoyed doing that. And they tried to do it as radical as they could as far as supervisors speaking out of term and the stuff they said. And I had one guy there from another district was saying how the board was doing such a wonderful job. And in the meantime, there was a motion to change the board chair. The board chair, doing a real, well, the guy works for the company the board chair owns. So I had to say, well, come on, you do work, work for him, company owns the company. You're just saying that. I want to see something having to do with conflict of interest, so that's one of my big things. So then we got into that issue and the conflict of interest and all that kind of stuff. So it was very interesting. And then the last 2 in the afternoon, there was one on Wisconsin's changing economy, and that was talking demographics and how the aging issue in Wisconsin is affecting a lot of things. And some of it had to do with that middle age group, the 35, 45, and that age group, maybe a little bit younger than that, and the lack of people in the workforce because we aren't getting the young people coming up. And it got into childcare and the issues with that because there seems to be more people that are working and need childcare and we don't have the resources. So that was a very interesting meeting. And the last one was a presentation put out by Bayfield County on the housing crisis. And they have a piece of property that they took on tax deed in the city of Washburn, and they're using that to put housing on. And it's an interesting concept. They're keeping the land, but they're putting the improvements on the land, and you can buy the improvements, but you don't get the land. The county's keeping the land. And the reason they went in Washburn County is because it was hooked up to their utilities. So it had water, city. Yeah, they had the utilities there. So they're putting in, I think, 6 units, and they want to add another 3 or something. Very interesting concept. And they actually hired a person, Kelly Westland, Kelly, she represented, I think, Tammy Baldwin in the past. And they both did an excellent job. And going forward, this is something we should think about because we got all this tax deed property that's accumulating. We don't know what we're going to do with it because of the issues with the new law and everything. And maybe there's some potential for something here, but it was a really, really good presentation. So that's what I did, other than have a lot of nice lunches and a nice dinner and camaraderie. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hodak?
I was asked to be an agitator. Who asked that question?
Agitator.
Oh, yeah. An agitator. I had to read what was on the script.
Okay, and I actually, we must have piggybacked on a couple places. It's really hard sometimes to see who is in those halls because they're pretty full. So you don't know who is there unless it's somebody like Bob who sits up in front and acts like he's in charge.
Were you at that session?
I was there.
Oh,
I was there.
should have heard the grumbling up there that you didn't hear.
I know. Well, anyway, so I as well went to the I went to the first one, the role of the constitutional officers. It's always real interesting to see what their jobs are, what power they have, as people would say. Oh, they have so much power. They have as much power as whatever they're allowed, and so we always have to remember that. I went to the one that Bob was with and where they had the spirited debate. And that was interesting because they had a packet they handed out. And in that packet, they had an agenda. And of course, we had to find some of the things that were missing from an agenda because agendas are very important. If they're not printed correctly, then you have, sometimes you can't have the meeting if they're not posted correctly. So that was good. So we went through that. And then, of course, they had ground rules of how this, like Bob had said, it was scripted and it was unscripted. There were minutes, and the minutes were very important also to look for because it didn't have a date. The time was off. It was the wrong day of August. And then you went through potato growing activities when they were talking about that. And I mean, it was just like, it made no sense, you know, so putting together minutes are very important. And there are some things that, and our new clerk will have to learn all of that. There's just some things you don't put it in because it's conversation, it's discussion, but just the main points, because you don't want a huge book of things to read. And then county board rules, all the things that were in there. It was very spirited. And I know in our own county, there are some spirited debates that are going on at some of our town meetings. And so that kind of is, that was very reminiscent of what is going on in our country. Then I went to another procedural, parliamentary procedures. Then on Tuesday morning, I went to the Women in County Government Breakfast. I always attend that one. It's just, and there are men there, just so you know, it's not just a woman only thing. There are men that do come there. And it's a nice panel of people that come to speak who have positions within the county, Milwaukee, Dane County, those areas that are mostly there. And then my last one I went to was partnering with Extension, and Nick sat on that panel. I didn't even know Nick was a panel member at first there. So talk about spirited conversation. That is an issue throughout the state. I thought it was just us in Price County, but it's not. It's a huge issue. So it was good to sit and listen to the disgruntled people and the people who support it. So it was very good to know that it's not just here. And then there was the closing General Assembly, and I had a chance to get on stage. Nick was so proud.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think it's a worthwhile thing to go to this conference. We learned a lot. Oh yeah, Joe, you were there too. Sorry.
Let's hoping you're gonna pass me by. Pretty much attended the same sessions everybody else did. Bob and Paula gave a good description of everything that took place there. The other part of it too was the camaraderie to get to meet other county board members, how they deal with different situations, and then just spend the time with board members on ourselves. So very, very worthwhile to go to, especially if you haven't been to one. I would recommend it. Thanks.
If I could add one more thing,
Sure.
They had an activity that was really, really great. And Joe, being a vendor at many of these things, I bet you thought that was kind of nice. You had to go, you had a sheet and you had to go to all the vendors, and they had a question about something in Wisconsin. What's the flower of Wisconsin? What's the tallest hill in Wisconsin? Well, there weren't many of us that knew that, but we knew it. So, and then you had to fill out the sheet and hand it in. But what I liked about it was that, and I think it was probably beneficial to vendors, it brought people into the vendors. And I thought that was a great idea.
Yeah, and it engages people. So it gets them out of their box, out of their shell, and spears the conversation. And that's what these really bring is, and I'll go back to it, is that communicating with other people in the same positions that we are in different counties is a very great value. So like I said, I would recommend it to anybody that has a chance to go. So well worthwhile, even though it started on a Sunday.
The Packer Sunday, they had the game.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with that. Everything Joe said there. Nick, is there anything you want to add? I know you were there.
No, we do, as administrators, we have a little bit of different agenda because on the Monday we do administrators, executives, and coordinators for half a day, which is our annual meeting. And then we participate with the board members the rest of the time for educational sessions. As Paula said, I was a panelist on the UW Extension Partnership panel. And what that was from is we are currently renegotiating the 71 county contract that is between the university and the counties on what the roles and responsibilities of each party is going to be defined as going forward. So we've been meeting with Dr. Carl Martin, who's the Dean of Students, and then his top 5 executive level, which each do a different area of the university extension program, to come up with a updated contract. And it really comes down to when you're hiring an educator, what does the role of the county play in that? When there's issues with an educator, what is the county role? So we've been doing that for about 18 months. And this was the culmination of it, was this panel. I think everybody spoke well of each other. It was not a bashing
Not
and
contentious.
trying
no.
to get somebody to do something. We do not have a finalized contract. We do have about 60% of it as a tentative agreement. So we're still working through a couple verbal issues in the contract. That's my conference.
Okay, thanks. Move on.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
Megan was there.
Go ahead. You got 2 minutes.
All right. I went, Corp Council has a different last day that goes all day. It was a good time, good to get to know some of the board members outside of sitting in here. And the Corp Council Day was very informative, lots of updates in the law and changes coming in, and the increased costs that you all are seeing is statewide and everywhere, and we're all working on it. And I think in large part because I was there and I didn't say no, I'm now the vice president of the Wisconsin Association of County Corporation Councils. So that'll be interesting to see and learn. And we're working on a new website to make a form bank so we can help counteract some of the stuff that's going on. And that's basically what my conference was.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Kopish.
Other county person there. Wasn't Jean there?
Yes.
This is your last conference.
It is.
Yeah.
It is my last conference.
Yeah.
WCCA, which is the Clerks Association, also meets at the same time that this conference meets. And we were very busy catching up on all the election legislation. A big issue with upcoming elections is security, both cyber and physical. So we had a lot of information on how to protect against that. Yeah, that's usually our big thing, especially this close to a presidential election, is concentrating on election. But it was my last conference, yes.
Anybody else get run over by a bus? I mean, geez, everybody's throwing anybody under the bus here. Like, Dennis, were you there? Oh, okay. Okay. Well, at least you didn't get hit then.
Just under chair report, I did go to the Wisconsin Aviation Conference, October 2nd to the 4th. Heard FAA updates. There's sessions. I won't go through all them, but they did talk about the economic importance of airports, and we can talk more about this subject when we get to the agenda item down here, Airport Improvement Plan. And then the next agenda item is electronic meetings that was added on the amended agenda from October 10th. This is on here because we had an issue at the last Forestry and Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting because there was not a quorum present, although all members were there either physically or virtually. So I guess, Nick, you want to?
Sure. So the meeting happened. In either way, it would have been. So how it happened, we were aware that Mr. Hastings and Ms. Dropnik were not going to be present at the meeting. They let us know they were going to be electronic, which is the proper procedure. We knew that Jeff and who was else in the room? Patty was in the room. Jordan happened to be working. We'll talk about that in a second. But so we would have had 2 people present, 2 people online, which still falls in the policy saying that that meeting can't happen because it's not a majority of individuals present. During the meeting or right before, they text Jordan came online. So that really made it way off kilter. So that puts 3 online, 2 in person. Nobody caught it the day of, so the meeting still happened because you have a quorum of the committee. You have 5 people. This hasn't happened before. So the reason we put it on here is we want, or what needs to be looked at or talked about. Do you, as a board, want to send that policy back to admin to review for your supervisor handbook to revise the requirements? You could look at committee meetings, it's okay to have 49% in person, because if you have 2 and 2, that would cancel the meeting, which could hinder a lot of things. If you want to keep it exactly the same, you could do nothing. For board meetings, you may want to consider keeping it the same, that members present need to be greater than members online. Just, it tends to flow a little bit easier that way. But it's something to be considered here of how do you want to move forward, knowing that more and more people are taking the opportunity to go online. One, we have great equipment that makes it easy to do. You can do it from a computer, you can do it from your phone. How do you want admin to address that policy?
So at this point, we'll open it up for discussion, I guess, just to give ideas to the admin committee, if they do want to take it up. Mr. Barkstrom?
Thank you. I think it's very difficult to, especially when you have serious topics, to not be face to face and in the room. So I would tend to think that we should just leave it as it is.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Popish?
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Barkstrom for what he said, but this policy was put in place during COVID. And there were some guidelines that came out from the Attorney General on what we needed to do, although they don't get into some of the specifics. The issue with having a quorum in the room is if you have any kind of electronic issue, you got a problem. And we did have one at Health Human Services where we couldn't hear somebody that was online. And you have that happen now, what are you going to do? And that's primarily why that's in there, is so that you can conduct the meeting even if everything else fails. And then having the chair there, obviously, I don't know how you chair a meeting remotely when you can't see the people. You may not be able to hear. People are talking over one another. So just from a practicality standpoint, that's why some of that stuff is in there. But again, this goes back to COVID, and although it's carrying forward, which is fine. So I agree with Mr. Barkstrom. We should leave it.
And I agree also. I guess I wanted it on the agenda, so we did talk about it. And then how do we manage this so people do show up? I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but Mr. Trimner?
I think in that part of the policy procedure is letting the clerk and the chair of each committee know that you won't be present, which then helps that chair decide whether or not to cancel the meeting, or helps the clerk also direct that meeting. So I think that's part of what we put it when we discussed this, to put it on here, is reminding individuals to get a hold of your chair if you're not going to be present, and the clerk, so that they can address this issue or try to get the chair to be at the meeting and be a voting member. Or how do you go forward with that issue? Is we don't want people to show up and then have to cancel the meeting because we weren't aware that there was individuals that are going to be online.
And I apologize that I wasn't able to make it. I didn't know that the other two weren't either, so we were just finishing up and I couldn't be gone. So I apologize for that. So.
Any other discussion?
So there was discussion about the chair. The chair does need to be physically present. And we also need to address voting on things like resolutions where, your signature is on there. So if you're voting remotely, how is that handled? I think that should be defined in the policy and procedure manual. And there's nothing in there about that right now.
Mr. Polachek?
I don't know how we can do this going forth, but there's a doggone good commitment when people sign on the line to run for a county board. I don't think that a lot of times people realize the time it takes to commit to the county. And I think going forth, we should take a better look at if we can make meetings or not. there's a adjust to a meeting when you're face to face.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palchik. So can the administration committee at least get this on their next meeting agenda and then do some more discussion? See if I don't think we should change the existing policy to make it, quote, lighter or easier or whatever, but to just address the clerk's concerns and any others that come up. Okay. Mr. Braca.
So I think I might be in the minority here. But I agree with the statements made by everybody here so far that in-person, face-to-face is definitely important. I think at all costs you should, and I agree with Larry when he says that it's a big commitment to serve the public. That is true. However, we have the technology to be able to remote in when certain individuals have other commitments. We want the best of the best to be representing Price County on the county board, in my opinion. And some of that is going to come with technology, in my opinion. We have the best of the best here, I believe. There's some of us that do have occasion where we have to remote in. And I think that should be part of the whole plan. So I wouldn't necessarily say we make this any harder for people to do that. I think the plan that's in place to where you let the clerk and the committee chair know that you're not going to be available, either excused or remote, I think that works. As far as the county board, I agree. You should be here for county board issues. Committees, I look at it a little different. Just my opinion. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Hallstrand.
So when I look at this, the resolutions that we pass in committees are then forwarded on to the full board. So we all generally are here at full board meetings, but obviously sometimes we can't be. But so at the committee level, it's a recommendation to the full board. That paper can be signed the day of the full board meeting as well. And anybody that had question of it will be face to face at that point. So the resolutions that we're passing at committee are then forwarded on to the full board to pass. So we really aren't passing anything at any of these meetings. We're recommending it to the full board for a vote to pass. So I agree with Joel that we've had conversations. I agree with Bob and Alan to a degree that a good meeting is when you're face to face. You can accomplish, you can see eye contact, but we also have talked in this room that we want to encourage working class people to be on these committees, to have a broader representation of the general public. And it's very difficult. We can go along the room and point at the people who still have jobs and working, and we want to encourage those people. Sometimes I think our electronic policy is a way that we can encourage working class people to still be part of these committees. So something for admin discussion points.
Any further discussion? Todak.
Just to speak to that, I believe when a person isn't here, a board member, then I believe that they should have their window open and always present to the meeting, so we know that they are there if you can. Obviously, if there's a quick trip to the bathroom or you have a child running through or something out of the bathtub or something, then maybe want to turn that off. But I know when I was first on the board as a teacher, that was a little different. It came as a surprise to committee members that I was on committees and there wasn't the chance of doing any kind of technology. So the committees then had to choose, and thankfully they were willing to do that, to move their meetings till when I was after school and I could be here. Not that it was a favorable change, but change is hard and change is necessary sometimes for situations. And I appreciated that they did do that. But I know most committees like to meet at 9 o'clock or 10 or whatever. So that wasn't until 3:45, so I could legitimately leave the school. So we have to think out of the box a little bit for some of these situations. And now we have a plus of the technology. And I always say if there was anything that good that came out of the pandemic was how we could use technology to better our attendances at places and to be able to work yet. So I think we need to move forward with those thoughts and go with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Well, thank you all. Mr. Hastings.
Yeah, I guess what were the reasons people didn't want meetings in the afternoons?
I believe what happens is what we have done before, and Mr. Kopish can talk about that, and Nick or whatever, and whomever. I believe, if I'm not correct, that meetings were tried later in the afternoon, not just committee meetings, but the county board meetings starting at 5 or something, and attendance was pretty nil. Mr. Kopish?
Yeah, we tried that a few times, and every time we tried it, we got the board there, but we lost most of our audience because a lot of times it's the staff that's there at the meetings, so the staff wouldn't come, and nobody else came anyway. They weren't going to come in the first place, so they didn't come. So it really didn't improve anything to have the meetings in the evening. So we went back to having them during the day.
Anybody else? Okay, well, we've got some food for thought for the administration committee, and we'll see what comes of that. Moving on, administrator report.
All right, the first one is the 2024 financial report. We did not discuss this at the executive committee meeting because that was on the first of the month, and even though Carrie would have had 9 hours to get it done if she stayed, we didn't have the report available. It is in your packet if you want to browse through it, but I didn't plan on going through it. The biggest jumps were our cash is down to $8,700,000. Last year at this time we were at 11 million. Ultimately, that comes down to we paid American Asphalt. I think the check was like $2.9 million, which we are taking a loan out to replenish that cash via all of our resolutions. So that'll jump back up around that November, December time. Sales tax, we're flat compared to last year. We're 3% behind, but that jumps up and down, but no major changes there. Forestry has talked about this at their meeting. Stumpage, we're only at 48% of last year's number. That's been from the beginning of the year. We had a very early weight restrictions or taking load limits, which slowed down the run into the mills early in the year. We had a rough winter. It just never froze to get the in the woods. We still have contracts that would equal this over a 3-year average, so there's not a concern with what we're budgeting versus what we're receiving. Joe did mention has been very dry. That may assist with early getting into the woods for the winter once it starts getting cold. So you could see some of that. High cost placements, Health and Human Services talked about that. We're seeing a slight increase year over year. We're seeing a lot of it get directed to the behavioral health area rather than the children and youth area. So it's just a matter of where you're putting it. If you combine both of them, we're still within budget. There are some concerns going into next year. There was just a report or something released by the state that Lincoln Hills is going up by, it's like 89% per day. It's over $1,000 a day. So if you have a class 1 individual that's being cared for, it's like $600,000 a year. So it is not what we want to get into. I know the state is working on closing Lincoln Hills. That's a requirement by state statute. In the meantime, we're asking the state to subsidize that difference that the cost will be until the closing. We, knock on wood, don't have someone at those facilities, but across the board, you're seeing less beds available and more cost. Any questions about the finance report? Okay. The next one, we have guest speaker, or the same speaker we had last time, Carl from Becker Hoppy. He's available to discuss this. At our last board meeting, we talked about T hangars at the airport and what that would look like, and then the funding for it. We asked Carl to come back to discuss further because there was questions on the new funding mechanism, and it's not even new, it's the same funding mechanism, but the way the funding mechanism will be looked at going forward. So is there any questions before we let Carl kind of discuss additional stuff with the funding?
Dick, were you planning on putting that PowerPoint or?
The
sheet up?
ROI. I have Carl either can share or I can. Actually, I'll share Carl. It's probably easier.
I've got a few other things too, Nick, to share. So
Okay.
I'm happy to do it if you'd like.
It should. So you should be allowed to share. We can see a map on.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. Like Nick said, my name is Carl Kemper. I'm the president of Becker Hoppy Associates out of Wausau, Wisconsin. Also a project engineer. What I typically work on is airport improvement projects. So I've actually done a lot of work at your airport. The first project I was ever on there out of college was to construct the parallel taxiway that you see here in the photo, and some runway improvements. And actually ties in well with our discussion today because another part of that project was to do some of the site grading down in this area for future hangar development. And I guess now is the future from where we were back then. Since we did the site grading for this hangar development area here, a large hangar was built there actually the following year in 2014. So you can see that large hangar here. And then the project that I'm here to speak with you about today that we've been selected to assist you with by the State Bureau of Aeronautics is for a T hangar that would go in this location here, and it would be served by a taxi lane that would be constructed here. So you can see some kind of rough outlines in this aerial photo that the site has been built up back in 2013 and is really a shovel-ready site for a T hangar and a taxi lane. So that's just a high-level overview of the project location. I can pull up a little bit more detailed exhibit here. So here's that large hangar that I was speaking about previously. Here is that proposed taxi lane that I was speaking about. And then here would be the, more of an exact location of the proposed T hangar building. I can share a couple photos here with you just to show you, an idea of what the proposed hangar would look like. So a T hangar, you can think of it as a storage unit for aircraft, really. It's similar to, a storage unit building that you'd see with multiple bays, partition walls in between, multiple doors. So this hangar, this is actually one that we did a few years ago at the Crandon Municipal Airport through the same type of project, federally funded project. Again, this one in Crandon was a 6-bay hangar. So you have 3 bays on one side that you see here with the 3 hangar doors, and then 3 bays on the other side. And here's another photo of the one in Crandon with a couple of the doors, one door fully open, one door half open, and the other closed. So that's just a high-level overview of, again, what we've been selected to help you all with at the Price County Airport. So talking about funding a little bit, Nick had kind of introduced that here at the start. We put together a flow chart to show how the funding for the project would work. There's a special funding opportunity that's out there right now that is a little bit unconventional or new, and that is BIL funding, bipartisan infrastructure law funding. And that funding is available to Price County Airport for the years 2022 to 2026. So you have 5 years worth of that BIL funding where the county is getting, I'd have to check, I think it's right around $130,000 per year of BIL funding. That the FAA has Price County's name on it. It is dedicated for Price County Airport only. And that funding does expire if you don't use it within a certain time period. So the 2022 funding that was allocated to Price County, this BIL funding would expire next year at the end of the fiscal year in 2025. So really, I would say kind of at an inflection point here of needing to make a decision on if you want to use this bill funding, if you want to accept this bill funding, and what you want to use it for. So through our discussions with leadership at the airport, at Highway Department, it was anticipated that a good use of the funding would be on a county-owned T-hangar building. And that a T-hangar building is something that you would normally have a hard time funding using federal funding, because without this bill funding being available, it only leaves one other FAA funding source that you could use for the T-hangar, and it would make it so that Price County would have to provide more of their own funding to make that project a reality. So the bill funding, again, is a rare opportunity to be able to fund most of this hangar with little sponsor-only funding from the county. And I guess we can get into that more now that I've just kind of given you an idea of what the bill funding is and some of the parameters of the bill funding. So the funding plan that we put together with the BOA is shown here. So in fiscal year 2025, we would start design essentially right now. Start design, that design would be funded with some of that BIL money. And that BIL money does have a sponsor match associated with it. Really, all of the federal funding that the county would receive for this project would be a 10% sponsor match. So the design would be funded with a BIL grant. And then construction would also, there is currently $502,000 that would be available in BIL money that the county could get in 2025. That's accessible in 2025. And so when you look at the total project cost and you subtract out any funding that's available to the county right now, it leaves a figure of about $1 million that the county would need to temporarily commit to. But I want to really emphasize this, that $1 million that the county would temporarily be committing to is really just a commitment on paper. And BOA has, has really preached that. I believe we even have emails or, could certainly get one if we don't have one. It's really an on-paper commitment. They're saying the federal funding, there's going to be more coming into the project in 2026, but it's not accessible until 2026. So right now we need the county to say that they can commit to the $1 million. And that's described here in parentheses at the bottom of the flow chart. So the county commits to the temporary sponsor-only funding in 2025, but project invoicing doesn't occur until 2026. By the time that invoicing would occur from the state BOA, $594,000 of that temporary sponsor-only commitment gets the FAA funding in 2026. So really that means, I'll keep going through the flow chart here. In 2026, you would get $450,000 in FAA entitlement grant and $144,000 in FAA bill grant, and there'd be a sponsor match of $49,000 on that. So that's really all of the FAA funding that would be available through fiscal year 2026 would be given to the county at that time, and that would reduce the county's sponsor-only obligation down to $300,000. That at that point, there would be no other currently available federal funding to go towards the project. And the county could seek reimbursement on that remaining $300,000 in future years. And what year the county could seek that reimbursement is really dependent on project prioritization at the airport. And so we've worked again with the BOA and with airport leadership to try to determine what good years would be to seek that reimbursement for the $300,000. And due to prioritization of other projects at the airport that are needed, we're estimating that probably in the early 2030s would be the best time for the county to seek and receive that reimbursement for the remaining $300,000. So I guess to close it out again, really what we're asking for is the temporary sponsor only commitment of about $1 million. 594,000 of that would be reimbursed in fiscal year 2026. There would be some sponsor match of 10% that I had mentioned, and it would leave $300,000 worth of funding to be reimbursed in future years to the county. So again, a project that would ultimately be paid 90% by the FAA and 10% by Price County.
When Carrie and I were working through the budget, we did put this in the budget because it's in our capital improvement fund. So if you look forward in your packet, there is a sheet that shows our current balance in our capital improvement fund, any projects that we're assuming to come out of there, how this would affect the overall balance, knowing that we would have a receivable on the books from 26 to say 32. It doesn't affect us doing any of our current projects, whether it's a dam project, other airport projects. We do a couple other small projects out of that, radios or any tower stuff, which I'm assuming with that project coming up, I think we put some funding in there. So we did build it in where we knew, based on talking to Carl, that there would be 400,000 out of pocket that sat there longer. 100 was always going to be out of pocket, but the additional 300 out of pocket for that temporary period of time between 2026, 27 till 2030, 2032. So it is built in. I did also, Carl, I'm going to share for a minute.
Yep.
Just so.
Yeah, Nick, that's one thing we haven't talked about is the revenue generating opportunity of this. And I think you're about to get into that.
Yep. So part of what I was asked to do from the basic, I did this at two very basic levels. And it was, where are we going to break even? I did not consider the 300 outstanding, because that's going to come back. That's just a outstanding amount that's held not in our bank account, but a different bank account till it comes in. So what I ran, and I didn't hand out all the numbers, but I did 3 different scenarios. Where scenario 1 is we could only get 2 bays rented at full time at $200 a month. At 5 years, it would be $225. At 10 years, $250. That we would rent 4 bays out on a daily or a part-time basis at $85 a day with a 5% utilization rate, which is your weekends or holidays come and go for that, because there's 4 bays. We increase that each year, or not each year, but after 5 years to 100, 15 after 5 years, and so on. So our break-even point on scenario 1 is 13 years, meaning that $150,000-$60,000 that's out of pocket would take about 13 years for us to recoup, and then every year after that would be increased revenue to the airport. Scenario 2, same exact numbers or monthly rates, but we rented out 4 bays. We had 2 bays at a part-time with 15% utilization. That took 6 years until we broke even to that 150,000-160,000. And then scenario 3 is all 6 bays were rented at $200 a month, increased. That took 10 years to break even. This was I didn't do a whole bunch of little things. We already pay for the employee to be there. We already pay for trash out there. We already pay. So there's not a per se increase there. We can assume more fuel would be sold, but we only have about a 3 to 5% profit on fuel. So it's not, if every hangar spends $200 on fuel a month, it's not a significant change in this break-even point. So what that graphed out looks like, the orange line here is the break-even point. You can see in each scenario, scenario 1 takes longer, scenario 2 is a little less, scenario 3. We did assume, so insurance goes up, things like that. So I took the same basic scenarios, And I just said every year there's $2,000 in upkeep, whether there's an insurance claim, which is $1,000 deductible, whether there's insurance going up, whether you have additional garbage usage, whether wear and tear, whatever it might be. It doesn't change the end result. It's, scenario 1 still breaks even. It's an extra year and a half. Scenario 2 takes till year 9, month 9. And then scenario 3 is year 12, month 6. So those are the break even. Now, the only issue you have to look at with break even is this money's not coming out of a business account like the airport. It's coming out of our capital improvement. We're just spending cash. So the positive part of what would happen here is actually every dollar of revenue, even though we're paying ourselves back, we're not paying ourselves back. So there's a segregated fund for capital improvement. Now we're getting operational revenue, which technically you could lower the levy need in that department, which would allow you to do other operational things somewhere else. Because say you got, in general, $20,000 in revenue, that's not $20,000 that goes back to the capital improvement. That's $20,000 revenue that offsets a levy need. So the levy in the airport could go down by $20,000, which then gives you levy to go towards children and youth. I don't know, wherever you'd put it. So that's the only weird caveat. Yeah, you're break even, but you're paying cash up front to actually give you more room in your levy to do operational costs. We've done this a couple times before. So if you downstairs probation and parole, we used our capital improvement fund to remodel the whole space, which gave us about 50% more in rent, which gives you more revenue, which allows you to do more operational costs that you couldn't have done with that money you used to remodel the basement. So those are again, high level, here's your ROI. My caveat is you can't use ROI the same way you would in a business because it goes to a different pool of funding to create that offset.
So this graph here, that break even 300,000, that
100, the 10% share.
Oh,
So
okay.
It goes up that far, but yeah, it's based on the 150 after the year 2030 or whatever. Whenever we get all our funding back and we're at the actual 90-10 split, this is what the break
You're
even.
making the assumption that we're going to take the 300 in the early 30s
Yep.
and not spend it.
On other projects, correct, yes.
So, Mr. Barkstrom.
I might be a slow learner, but I've heard a lot of things that financial, going back and forth. I heard $1 million, but then is that building worth $1 million? When I look at it, I don't think so. So what is the actual cost going to be for us? Is that 300,000?
It'll be 10% of the total. Carl, do you have your spreadsheet because problem is it's in phases. There's 4 different.
A lot of gymnastics here.
Yeah. So there's 4 or 5 different phases, and I don't know if I have to stop and Carl gets to present again, but Carl has a spreadsheet and it talks about engineering is going to be X dollars. We owe 10% of that. Phase 1 of X, Y, or Z is going to be 10%. So total project is like 1.5. It's $1.6 million with everything said and done. That's the 90-10 approximate split. So our end cost after 2032 would be 10% of that, which is about 160.
Does that include the taxiway?
Carl, you want to answer?
No, that does not include the taxiway. It includes the aprons, Brian, Mr. Chair, but not the taxiway.
Okay.
So, yeah, you're going to need to zoom in a little bit on your.
Yeah, this is
we can
kind of a glutton for punishment if you want to dive into this thing, but happy to do it.
So if you look at Carl's spreadsheet, there's right in the middle, he's pointing it at. It's a good thing I keep that in the drawer. Yeah. Standing up here. So this one's the T hanger all the way down to this, I believe. He moved up. So it's this and up. So you can see it says T hanger over there. So there's several different phases of the project, but the total is 1.6 is what I've been working off of. It's slightly below that.
But the value of that building is over $1 million.
The cost to construct and engineer is over $1
Sure
million.
didn't look like $1 million building to me.
And what about the taxiway? How are we gonna pay for that if we approve this?
Carl, how's it? It's in the different project line.
The taxiway, for the taxi lane, there are other federal funding sources available. So the two that I had previously spoken to were entitlement and bill. Those are shown here, and those are the only funding sources that can be used for a hangar are entitlement and bill. Now, there are these other funding sources, apportionment and discretionary, that the FAA allows to be used for other projects like taxiways. And so what the Bureau of Aeronautics has done is they've shown funding the taxiway with apportionment funding, which is a special type of funding that really the BOA will put whatever amount is needed towards that taxiway project to make it happen. It's not limited like the entitlement and the bill funding amounts are.
Is there a sponsor share to that?
Yes, the sponsor share on the taxiway is 5%. So we had talked about the sponsor share on the hangar being 10%. The sponsor share on the taxiway is 5%. And actually, with the recent FAA reauthorization that was passed, authorizing the FAA through years 2028, they have actually reduced the sponsor share on both entitlement and these other funding sources here down to half of what it typically would be. So in years 2025 and 2026, the county's obligation on the hangar actually goes down from 10% to 5%. And then similarly in years 2025 and 2026, for this apportionment funding, the county's share for the taxi lane, for example, goes down from 5% to 2.5%.
So it looks like the taxiway is $5,211 of our share.
Mr. Holstrand.
So is this a build it and they will come project, or do we have a waiting list for people looking for hangars? And Mr. Chair, you're in the aviation business. Is there a need for 6 more hangars? And is $250 a going rate? Are we in the ballpark, and do we
I think
have
the
people
monthly-
asking?
The monthly rate is in the ballpark. The daily rate might be a little high. I asked for a list from the manager and highway, Roger, and I was given 6 names that people that are interested in hangaring airplanes. So I guess it's if
It's a
that-
worthy project then.
I think if
that was my
that list
question.
is valid, and I'm not saying one way or the other, but we'd fill it up right away.
Okay, good.
So what are we looking for today from the board? Oh, Ms. Stiffen.
Yeah, okay. You answered part of my question. You said the annual rates are in the range?
Monthly, but
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Is this a contractual 10-year rental? Because we've seen what happened from 2014 to 2024. We can see what happens with the economy. Is that a contractual 10-year? And if the economy, we don't know what it's going to do in the next 10 years, is that going to keep up, or is that an adjustable rent?
I don't know the general timeline when you rent.
I would say it'd be an annual lease for the long term. But I don't know, I mean, that, I've seen that out there. I don't know what we'd have to decide what, or the
That's
highway
correct.
commissioner and the airport manager and those involved would have to decide what
My
what we wanna do.
understanding is when you rent these, you start to customize them slightly too. So you invest,
Well,
whether
that's-
it's heating or, something
That's
like
up
that.
to
The local,
our policy. We'd have to develop a policy of what they can and can't do.
so people don't just rent and walk away. They tend to make it their own.
So if we did a 10-year lease, we would be locked into that for 10 years.
Michelle, go ahead.
So I guess I just don't know enough about this, and I can admit that, but why do we want to be a landlord? Because that's the way this is coming across in my brain. And if that's not right, then maybe somebody can enlighten me. But like we walked away from the Red Apple, right? Or they bought their building. The fairgrounds is no longer the county, that's separate. I just don't understand why we want to have a rentable facility that we want to govern.
The only difference we've talked about here a little bit is the airport property is different. So you can't purchase on everything on the airport is a rental. Even though you may have built your own facility, you are renting that facility from the county.
You're renting the land.
The land, but you can't take the facility. I mean, I suppose you could pick it up and take it with you, but if that lease ends, you walk away for that land. So it is a unique property based on federal and state regulations. So that was where the difference becomes in that property. Carl has his hand up.
Carl?
That's correct, Nick. Due to federal grant assurances, everything, all buildings on the property other than county-owned buildings, there's a tenant who is renting the land. This hangar is kind of the opposite. The county owns the building, but then rents the building. So questions as to reasons why airports do this. Airports do this because, like Nick showed, after the return on investment is made, then it becomes a revenue source for the airport. It also provides other indirect benefits to the airport. Nick had mentioned fuel flowage, although it doesn't sound like there's much profit on that. Increased fuel flowage is a positive thing, not only in terms of revenue, but just in terms of keeping fresh fuel in the tanks at the airport. More tenants on the field also boosts operations at the airport, which can increase federal funding for other projects. And then lastly, there can be indirect economic benefits to increasing utilization of your airport, increasing users, not only based users, but transient users of your airport. We see a lot of instances where, for example, somebody wants to move to Phillips, have a seasonal home or a cabin, but they won't do that unless there's somewhere to hangar their airplane. When opportunities like this come up and they have somewhere where they can hangar their airplane, then they're willing to pull the trigger on that seasonal home or cabin, and it's an increased tax base to the county. So those are some of the both direct and indirect benefits. And to the question about the cost of the building, so the building's about 8,000 square feet, so maybe larger than what was expected when looking at that photo. So an 8,000 square foot building with operational hangar doors, which are not cheap. You're typically looking at about $150 per square foot for a building like this. So using that estimate for an 8,000 square foot building at $150 per square foot puts you in about the $1.2 million range. And we have included some contingency on this to hopefully make it so that this $1.5 million figure that's being used, that we don't have to come back to the board for that.
Mr. Polachek.
In comparing what we're talking about at the airport to the Red Apple Center, the land and everything went with that when we sold that. Here, we own the land and we own the building, and it will continue to be in Price County's name. Just to shed a little light on the subject. Thank you.
Mr. Kopish.
Yeah, Nick, thanks for the analysis. I think you did a good job with that. Do you have what the net revenue gets to be on an ongoing basis? What are we looking at? That could be a levy offset. And I'm not too concerned about the capital improvement money because, you addressed that. It's really not like borrowing money to do something. I mean, it's money we have for this kind of stuff. So it's not so much return on that investment as what kind of a net revenue we're going to get off of it based on your assumptions.
Yep. Scenario one would be about $9,000 a year, and that's where we had 2 bays rented,
Yep.
And the utilization on the daily. Scenario 2 ends up being just under $17,000 a year. And that's with the 4 bays, and then the rental. And scenario 3, which everything was rented out, it's about $17,000 a year. And like Carl said, there is an increase in fuel usage. That's probably our biggest problem and why we don't have a high profit fuel is we don't go through it fast enough. So when we buy it at X dollars, we have to sell that whole tank at X dollars. When then all of a sudden everybody else be next door buys a cheaper tank, people fly there to fill up, or that they'll fill up when they're out and about because they're on a cheaper tank. And then all of a sudden everybody else's goes up and ours is still at our old price. So it's really hard to make a profit on fuel when you're not going through it quickly.
I'd like to add one thing. Regarding that list of potential renters, I just want to make it clear, my name's not on it. Just so there's no appearance of conflict of interest.
What is the current year's tax levy for the airport?
I will look right now. I have the page. Hold on. Airport.
Used to be 70,000 or something. Is it still like that kind of a number?
So airports revenues are approximately 131,000. Expenses are about 310. So we have $177,000 levy.
Is that the levy?
Yep.
Well, years ago when Chris was the airport manager and we'd get into debates on things, and I told him, I says, when you get that tax levy down to zero, I'll get off the board. I guess I'm in trouble. I'm not going to live
going
that
the
long.
other way.
Anyway, side note. I think, I mean, we can talk about what ifs, and Carl brought up a what if, but there's also what ifs that go the other way too. It's a coin toss, and it boils down to whether the board is willing to accept basically a 10-year return, so to speak, a break even or not, and whether you trust the assumptions made in the analysis. That's basically where we're at. So if you think this is a good project going forward for $17,000 a year, and it's interesting, not renting it full, got a better break even than renting it full, which is kind of an interesting.
We were surprised when we ran the numbers.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Carl, did you have something?
I was just going to add the state Bureau of Aeronautics currently is putting together an economic impact study for all airports in Wisconsin. And I think that's going to be really important for, a lot of governing boards and committees and councils in the state. Because I had mentioned the indirect economic benefit that airports provide to communities. I think when this economic impact study does get released, I know the $70,000 tax levy, again, that's only taking into account the direct economic benefits that the airport provides. So fuel sales, land leases, things like that. But if you take into account the indirect economic benefits, the business that it brings to the area, businesses that are based on the field, that go into other pots of county money, I think that's going to show that the actual tax levy is in the black there.
Mr. Brecker.
Just to kind of talk about what Carl said there on incidental benefits to this too, and correct me if I'm wrong, Carl, but a lot of the funding from the FAA and the BOA, whether it's the 90 or the 5 from the BOA, the 90 from the federal, is based on usage of the airport and based aircraft, if I'm correct. So an incidental of this is if you get usage out of your airport, that funding that we get to maintain our airport over the years is kind of tied to your usage also, correct?
Depending on the funding source, it can be, that's correct. The BIL funding is a great example of that.
Thank you.
One thing too, Carl, do you want to talk about how where the entitlement funding comes from? It's for other airport. It's every time you fly, correct? Or every time not you as a small pilot, but like me as a vacationer or a business person?
I'm not sure about that, Nick. So there are, when you buy an airline ticket, there's about a $4 fee right now that currently comes out of that airline ticket and is put into what is called passenger facility charges. Now, I believe that funding that's taken out for passenger facility charges is only used at those primary airline airports. Nick, I'm unsure. I think the entitlement funding that we're discussing here and the BIL funding is just separate, congressionally, appropriated funding that is made available for airports.
I got a question. What do I say to the person on the street that comes up and says, why are we spending this money on a hangar for certain, 6 people, say, and not putting it towards roads or new equipment?
Well, we can't use this funding for anything but the airport. So if we choose not to do this funding, it's a different airport will receive the funding. So we get that a lot in a lot of these projects. You see it at the school districts. Why are you putting in a brand new track when you can't afford teachers? Well, it's segregated funding. So in this case, airport money has to be allocated to airports. If we as an airport choose not to, or as a county, it goes to the next person who's willing to put it into their airport and offset or do that matching fund. So if anything, the conversation change should be, we are putting the 150 towards it. That could have went towards something else. So not the 1.5, it'd be the 150.
Any further discussion? What are you looking for today, Nick? Just approval from the board to leave it in the budget as is?
It's not in the budget. It's in the budget, so you guys understood where it would be. It's a capital improvement thing. I believe, and Carl, you may know a little bit more. I would recommend some type of motion today to say we want to move forward with this project, and then we'll decide if it needs to go and get an actual resolution to clean it up, and we'll have that for the November meeting. But if we have some form of official direction today, that would get us to where we need to be.
I got a question.
Mr. Hastings.
You said insurance is figured into that. How much is the insurance for something that could potentially hold $6 million in airplanes?
Yeah, it's based on square foot. It's based on we didn't call our insurance agent and say this is what it is. What our insurance or how our property and liability insurance works is just an overall value. So when I say insurance was built in, when we do get another squad car, it goes up pennies. It's just an overarching amount. So we didn't have, we don't insure the planes inside. We just insure the building. So it's minimal. That's why I just chose $2,000 as incidental, whether it's your insurance, your water bill, we're not going to have water there. Electrical, which I figured in electric, so that's not part of it. Snow plowing, which we already snowplow. More garbage. Maybe we have to empty twice. So that's where it was very hard to find incidentals that would be associated with this project.
And you can build it into lease too.
Yep.
As far as the aircraft owner, he has to have a certain amount of liability insurance.
Correct. We'll do all that. Yeah.
Here's a question.
Any more discussion?
Carl.
That's exactly right regarding the insurance. So I lease a T hangar here in Wausau. I'll just add that I would have never been able to get into aviation or flying. I would be one less based aircraft at the Wausau Downtown Airport if they didn't have a T hangar available for me, if the city didn't have one available for me to rent. I'm 34 years old now. I started flying when I was in my late 20s. Didn't have the capital then to build my own hangar. I still don't have the capital to build my own hangar. But being able to lease a hangar, again, added another based aircraft to the Wausau Downtown Airport, much more fuel sales to the Wausau Downtown Airport. Regarding insurance, that's correct. It's written into the lease agreement that I must have insurance on my airplane for when it's in that hangar, that it's covered. So really when the county is insuring the hangar, they're not insuring the aircraft that are in the hangar, they're insuring the building itself. So if the building got taken out by a tornado, if the building got ran into by a snowplow, anything like that, that's what the insurance is for, that the county would be providing.
Any further comments? I would entertain a motion to, I guess, give direction to the administrator and staff to move forward with this. Motion by Hallstrand, second by Stefan. Any further discussion? We do a voice vote or?
Everybody's computers are still up.
Okay, it's,
Okay, well,
okay, we're going to vote with the computers.
yeah.
Is there any other discussion? We'll go ahead and vote then.
Michelle?
Yeah.
That was convincing. Yeah.
Larry, you want to
Just voice.
voice vote, Larry?
She can put it in for you.
Bob, you thinking?
Yeah, I'll say yes.
Another, yeah.
Yes. Alan, what's your, I can record yours.
Hang on, IT's here.
Maybe the
It's pretty bad when I gotta do IT. Oh, boy.
Motion to move forward with the airport improvement plan passes 12-1 with a no vote from Supervisor Hastings.
Okay. Move on to the next item, budget.
Thank you, Carl.
Yeah, thanks, Carl.
Thank you all.
You want to take a 2-minute break or?
Let's take a 5-minute break.
We will still be voting on the budget, so
You put it on mute before you said the time to be back.
I didn't, that was Mr. Trimner, but okay.
Well, just saying.
Sorry.
All right,
Sorry.
Nick, you want to continue on and go on to the 2025 budget? Need to approve and forward to public hearing.
Yep. So the role of the board today is to say, this is the levy number that's going to the publication for the hearing. So we had very few changes. Trying to bring it up on the screen. Somewhere. There it is. So executive committee went through the budget, approved the loan amounts, and Carrie updated those. It should be your large packet. So page 1, that's your operational levy of $7,765,994. That's this year's, and then we make the adjustments for the maximum. For next year would be $7,778,807. We went with a 2% wage increase. Sales tax, we have always been quite conservative on that, so we had some room there. Shared revenue, we received more funding. We adjusted some budgets. Interest on investments, we continue to do well on those, so we recognize some of that revenue for the future years. When you see a 2% wage increase at 400,000, that is not 2%, obviously. What that is the 2% plus the remainder of what needed to be allocated for the wage study that was put in place earlier this year that we had talked about. The next section or the next line is Catkins. We did come to a tentative agreement with them, so the budget would continue to be that 54. The total increase was 54,000. So we're budgeting $100,000 this year for the budget. Next year we'll go up probably 12,500, and then the following year about 12,500 to get to the negotiated rate. We'll be using some ARPA funding in the meantime to offset that one-time payments, or not one-time payments, but one-time use of that revenue. So we'll have a finalized contract with them later. you can just pass that out. Jules is passing out something from Carl's presentation. So in the end, we have a balanced budget of 0 over the maximum allowed. So that's what that last on the first page, what that means. If you look at our debt, that did go up, and that went up due to the resolution for the $3.1 million of road work, and then we did an additional $125,000 in payments for yellow equipment. So that was the greater. I kind of gave you some insight into next year's budget, where we're going to try to absorb that greater payment to get out of the interest, or the interest portion of that next year. The one spot that we have to, or we're going to update you on, that was put in the budget, was library services. It was talked about at the executive. So on Appendix E, they recommended 80% for the budget. And then that was a increase. If you go to that page, Appendix A, of about 4 cents per on the mill rate, difference of 51,570 year over year. Any questions on that or any discussion? None on that. All right. 4 cents per 100 or per 1,000, which yes. So the mill rate is per. On it. But the mill rate went up 4 cents, which on $100,000 mill rate is $5. I don't have it in
4 cents overall, or you're talking about just for the changes?
Yeah,
I was going to say.
Oh, sorry. Yes, the whole would have been.
At 100%.
Yes, 4 would have been 100. It went up 1 cent per 100,000.
And that question
1
was
cent.
asked at executive.
Yep. How much it would go up
It was 1 cent was quoted to us at executive.
per 100,000, correct? So our total levy increase is 25 cents per 100,000. The library would be 1 cent of the new library number made that go up by 1 cent.
So if we want,
Just wanna-
so if we wanted to change that percentage, is this where we do that, or do we have to go into the motion first?
I would wait till we finish the document, and then you can make motions or changes.
Before that, okay.
Yeah,
I mean, okay, got it. Thank you.
to keep it clean, I guess, yeah. The next, so that was library services, again, Appendix E, if there's any questions. Bridge and culvert aid, that one went up 2 meetings ago because some of the projects finished up that we had approved earlier. So there's $341,000 in bridge and culvert aid. Again, that program is just like the libraries. It's outside of the levy limit. It's any participating bridge and culvert aid municipality. They can come to the county, get a project approved. It's a 50-50 split between the municipality and the county residents. We are a pass-through, we're a collector. In many cases, we're the bank up front and do the whole project cost, and then we get reimbursed. But that's how it works. It's above and beyond your levy. So the 2023 approved levy was $11,761,000. We're recommending for the 2024 recommended levy would be $13,392,335, or an increase of 1.63 million. The operational levy went up 20.28%. The library levy went up 0.44%. The bridge and culvert aid went up 2.57%, and the debt levy increase was 10.57 for a total levy increase of 13.86%.
Wow.
The equalized value went up by 8.92%. So because the equalized value went up so much, the actual impact to the mill rate was less than if there was no increase. So it was 0.25 or 4.45% mill rate increase.
But, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Mr. Kopish.
but the actual cost to the taxpayer has gone up 14%.
the mill rate goes up 14%. Or
The mill
levy-
rate
the
went up
levy,
only
correct.
4.5,
Sorry,
but
yes.
your equalized value went up, so they're paying a higher tax levy rate on more
The total
value.
The total levy collected is 13% more.
I guess I didn't expect a 14% increase and most of that looks like it's from the
The
debt.
debt, it was $1
It's
million
$1.2
of debt.
in debt, additional debt. So all these little bits and pieces we've been approving adds up to a,
Yep. So if you go to page 17 in your packet, you can see our historical property tax levy increase. So in 2018, we went up 6.55%. 2019, we went up 5.8%. 2020, we went up 2.59%. 2021, we started this borrowing. I don't know what you want to call it, the process. So the 5-year plan process. So we went up $1 million that year, and that was 12.83%. 2022, we went up 4%, 23, 3%, 24, 3%, and then there's proposed $1.6 million increase or 13% again for highway borrowing. So historically, we've done this, but we've averaged 4%, 5%. The biggest change is your mill rate. And so this is what happens. What the biggest change or the biggest effect on this is when you get a reval of a community. So Fifield reevaluated 1 year, so then it goes way up. They pay a bigger chunk of the pie, which is equated to the next page. So we can never collect, just because someone creates a new property, we have net new construction slightly, but it doesn't automatically let us collect more. It's where the pie gets distributed. So Town of Fifield currently takes 12% of the total levy. If they got reevaluated, they might be 14%, but that means Town of Worcester would go to 13. The village of Catawba would go, somebody would have to go down that 10% as a total. We can't collect more than 100%. So it's always distributed based on a percentage. So when we see the mill rate, that's, I wouldn't say more important, but more accurate of what, if all else is equal, what actually happens. So if everybody's house would actually go up by, I think this year our mill rate went up 18%, or not mill rate, or equalized value. I can't remember. It's last year was 18 or 19, but if our equalized value goes up 18%, technically if you took every house and went up by 18%, we would only be looking at the mill rate, the collection point. So that's what the hard part is about saying the levy went up, but the mill rate went up. Which one do you use to truly evaluate? There isn't a good, you just continue to do it year over year to evaluate where it went.
Mr. Colquish.
Nick, these percentages are percent of the total, right?
Total bill,
Okay, so I look at Town of Lake, it's 10.5%
correct,
of the total tax levy.
collected.
Okay.
Town of Worcester's at 14. Town of Lake, yes, 10.56. The last page is new and we're skipping ahead, but we're right by it. It's not new, it's updated. So Carrie went back to, and with Oakley, Polachek, our new register of, what is she? Tax lister. In the register of deeds, property tax lister. And got where we send bills to for taxes and how that has changed. So in 2008, we had 61.81% of our tax bills going to a address within the county. So we assume that's a where you live, where your primary residence is, and then 38.19% didn't, or of tax bills went outside the county. If you look at 2023, we're seeing a migration towards more tax bills going outside of the county. So we're assuming ownership outside the county of 42.23% compared to the 38 in 2008. It's slightly up since 2018, but it's been the basic trend. So it's just interesting information. Everybody's favorite page tends to be page 16. Where does your levy go? So on a $100,000 home, you'll pay $49.08 per month, or $589 per year of county taxes. So on your tax bill, you also have schools, your local municipality, your tech college. Public safety is a large portion along with transportation. So public safety, of that $49, 14 goes to public safety, 20 goes to transportation, 65 cents goes to the airport. Libraries is $1 per month, $1.13. The reason conservation and development is negative, that's because they are the grants. The stumpage is probably the biggest one. Debt, so squad cars, van, COA van, switch servers, $2.
Is that home in Ogama with the home tree?
I'd never even noticed that. The tree, the palm tree. It blew up here from the Hurricane Milton.
Tropical.
Yeah. So that's the general packet. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I do.
Mr. Hastings.
I'd like to make a motion that the library services stays at 70%, please.
Say that again.
I would like to make a motion that the library services stays at 70%.
Okay. Is there a second?
And that's what it currently is in the budget.
That 80.
Well, you're recommending it to 80. I'm just motioning that it stays at 70.
Is there a second?
I can do this if you want.
Oh, okay. Good, do it on a computer.
Where are we at? What did you just say?
She's gonna put the motion, the
On the
question
screen.
on a computer.
Okay.
Oh, mine doesn't work.
I'll just do voice votes when we get there.
Okay, motion made by Hastings, second by Kopish to bring the county's share back to 70% versus the 80% that's listed in this packet here. Any discussion? Mr. Bracca?
Did we receive anything from the libraries on the request at the prior meeting to see some budgets or things like that?
Yep, so we did receive budgets, we received paperwork that did get reviewed at the executive, if you want to see more. The main discussion was the budget showed like, here's our revenue, here's our expenses, here's our shortfall currently. And if we would not receive additional funding, they would have to try to balance their budgets within the funding that they receive.
After executive reviewed that, was there a recommendation that came out of executive, or was it just informational at executive?
The recommendation was the 80% in the budget.
Yes, that's correct. Mr. Hastings?
I just wanted to point out the circulation numbers are down, and that means less work down there.
There.
Mr. Kopish?
Yeah, and I talked to this at the last meeting. My concern is the money really won't end up doing anything for the libraries, and it'll affect the tax levy in the municipalities. You know, one number goes up, another number goes down. I still have that concern, but there's no way we can control that. Absolutely no way we can control it. So it's a frustrating issue. Thank you.
Anybody else?
You have Michelle.
Yeah, hi. So I'm just curious, is there a way to split the libraries up like that Ogama, if they're doing and showing, improving that they do so much more and had the 400 people involved? Like, is there a way to split them up with who can get what kind of funding?
I'll let you answer that, Nick, if you can.
No, so we pick a county funding, so it affects all three libraries. We do collect funding for out of county libraries, so Medford, Rib Lake, all over. They're all over Barron. I mean, those are capped at the 70% based on the library plan.
Ms.
Hodak?
So that request is kind of, when we had the ARPA monies that the Health and Human Services or the Health Services had extra, and they put it out for the playgrounds in our county that were being constructed or some were just in the dream era, but we decided as the Health and Human Services Board, and that came through Michelle Edwards with that we would do this equally throughout the county, that each of the municipalities, Park Falls, Phillips, and Prentice, would share the 300,000 that they were offering. Now, that didn't set right with some of the playground organizations, but that was what was decided. We're not here to pull our county apart. We need to work together. And I find this just not, this just cuts to the chase of my heart being like, this is not right. We have kids who need, and adults who need the library. We have issues in our school where they need more reading. We're standing here, we're trying to use our monies all over the county to make it better. And we keep forgetting that library. They provide a great service. The libraries in our county provide a great service. And if we can't look at some of these dollars that are here, what is it? You just said that where does your money go on this sheet? On this sheet, the library gets $1.13, $1.13 a month out of your taxes. That's right now. That's at 70. You can't look at bringing that up a little higher?
Anybody else?
You have an offset proposal?
I do.
Well, I'd like to hear it.
I would like to go for 100%. That would be my motion. I would like to amend that motion.
What's going to offset the cost? How are we going to pay for that? What are we going to take away from?
Why do we have to take away from? I mean, we're looking at an airport that's going to have 6 hangars, which I don't have a problem because I think that's going to improve our community. It's going to bring more people here. They're going to use it. We're going to use more money here. I can't imagine that we can't work that out, folks. This is just ridiculous. We take these community programs. Now, we heard from Ogama. They had a great summer program. Did we hear from the other programs? The library services up in Park Falls, they have many things that are going on. The library services in Phillips, they have wonderful things going on. Have any of you walked into these areas? I know some of you have, to check it out. To your question, Mr. Wartko, I guess that I would have to put that back to Carrie and Nick and see what that would be. They're the number crunchers. They bring it to us.
I was just asking if you had some ideas.
Mr. Palachuk.
Mr. Chairman, would it be appropriate to hear from the Phillips librarian on this item? We've heard several times, but maybe to reiterate what goes on there.
Nick is.
Rebecca, would you like to address this?
Before you continue too far, there is a motion to amend, and if you continue to talk, that'll automatically be accepted because you've started talking.
We got a motion to amend the first motion. So Ms. Hodek's motion is to amend it to 100%, correct?
Correct.
There's a motion on the floor for 80%.
Correct. Though to go to 70, but her motion was to amend it to 100.
You want to amend Jason's?
Correct.
That's the way I understand it. So, and we have a second by Polachek. So we'll vote on that first.
Yes, in the end, but you can move on now with discussion. I just
Okay.
wanted.
Okay.
Go ahead, Rebecca. You come up.
Okay, so I did bring what I presented to the executive committee. I did not bring copies for everybody. The bottom line is that the county circulation does make up over the last 5 years between 62 and 66% of the circulation that happens at the library. Currently, you guys are paying for between 45 and 48% of that. So I think I think that's a big deal. You use 66% of my library, you reimburse me for 40% of it, and that's not a business model that's sustainable for anybody over a long course of time. The other thing that I had showed exec was the increase in ebook materials. So you have ebooks and e-audiobooks. People need a library card to access those for free. So they're still coming to the library and getting a library card or getting an e-card online. But then the library pays for those electronic materials, and we don't get any reimbursement for the electronic materials. So my eCirc has now doubled in the past 5 years. And that's circulation that's taking away from circulation in print, and I can't do anything about that. And every year the system decides to spend more on those materials because more and more people start using their e-readers. And again, we love that. We just want people to read. We don't mind paying more for the e-materials so that you don't have to wait as long for the audiobook that you're waiting for. But again, nobody is being charged for those materials either. And then, yeah, we, at the end of August for this year, we've already done as many programs as we did last year. So we are working our tails off, offering things to the community. We did a survey. They said they wanted more programs. We're offering more programs. Any kids program that we have, we give them a snack. The price of granola bars has doubled. You guys all know that. So that cost has increased. Anytime we do an art program, the cost of all those materials have increased. None of that funding formula is going to help us with these programs. And my attendance at those programs are up. We've already had 100 more people attend through the end of the summer than we had last year. I understand Mr. Kopish's concern. I wish there were a clear way for us to address that concern. All I can tell you is that the city of Phillips has never cut my budget. I can't tell you that they won't. I can't tell you that they can't. But the mayor has told me that they haven't ever discussed cutting it. So while I've been at a 0% increase for the last 15 years with the city, it's not in their plan to decrease my funding. He came to me, he said, if you get more money from the county, that's money that you earned for the library by convincing the county board that the library needed more money. If we don't get this increase and I leave my budget exactly as it is, so nobody gets a raise, I don't spend a penny more on books, I don't spend a penny more on gas, whatever, I leave it all at 0%, my health insurance is increasing 25% this year. I can't do anything about that. The city is not going to help me cover that. I have $7,000 that I will need to find somewhere. Like, we're not just asking for money because we don't need it. As for how I'm running it, how many part-time people I have, how many full-time people I have, the library board looks at all of that. And they ask the same questions that you guys are asking. It's the whole reason why your chairperson appoints people to my board, so that you have representation. So I go to them with my budget, and if I say that I want to give us all 30% raises and I don't want to spend any money on books, they say, no, Becky, you can't do that. I mean, that's why they're on the board. If they have a concern about how many part-time people I have versus how many full-time people I have, they tell me that. I, 3 years ago, had 4 full-time people and a 30-hour part-time person in addition to my 2 other part-time people. I now have 1 less full-time position, and my 30-hour person went down to 20 hours a week. So it's not as though I don't cut when I think that I can. But we have people that want programming. And to run a program during library hours means that I need someone to run the program and sit at the desk. So I need 2 people there. You know, they're, like I said, we're working as hard as we can. If you have concerns, then by all means, you should be asking your representatives on the library board. But I mean, I know that it's not free for you to do this, but an 80% increase is a penny on your mill rate. And, you know, your libraries were working really hard, and the cost of everything, you know this, the cost of a hardcover book over the past 15 years has doubled. I mean, questions? I'm happy to address any of your concerns, really.
Mr. Kopish.
In the same vein, and I did talk to the mayor about it, and he says they've kept the same levy for I don't know how many years. Well, if your costs are going up, why doesn't the city raise their levy and give you more money?
They did give us a 3% increase last year. I should tell you that.
But their levy didn't go up. So
I
you're
don't-
telling us when your costs go up here, you can't spend it over there because you only have so much in your budget. But if the city's still giving you the same levy for I don't know how many years, you think with your costs going up, they would give you more levy money to help you with the library.
I mean, I would love if they would.
Instead, we're asking the county to kick in where I don't see the municipality doing it. I can't speak for Park Falls. Didn't look at those kind of numbers. But I mean, again, maybe they won't reduce it. And in your case, you may get all that money. But I tell you, I think most of that 100,000 increase is going to Phillips, isn't it? I would say so, because your circulation numbers are way
circulation in
different
the
than Park
county.
Falls. Park Falls, they've only got 25% of their 52,000. They've got about 13,000 goes out of the district. So they got a whole different dynamic than
Right,
you
we're
have.
50-50 almost.
Yeah, and they're 75-25, so it's a whole different ballgame. But I have that concern.
I know.
I mean, we sit here and we're looking at a 13.8% increase in taxes. I mean, it's a lot of those pennies that add up to this, and the big chunk of ours is, we made a decision on highway, and we just added $1 million from where we were. So that's a big deal. That's to fix our roads. I don't know. How much can you keep raising taxes? I mean, even if you look at our track record, they've been gone up quite a bit year by year by year by year by year. That's a lot in taxes. And yours is a very little piece of it, but it's a piece of it.
Right.
And you know where my concern is. And so I won't say anymore. Thank you.
Ms. Stephen?
Okay. You've seen me in the library. I was there last week. I do have library books in my house for me, so I do use it. I don't know, and I trust the executive meeting's decision on this. You know, we have meetings and meetings and meetings, and then we bring something to the board and it explodes like this. So I trust whatever the executive decision came up to. I am a library user, so I'm supporting the library somehow. But I don't know if we can amend back to what the executive board came up with, because they're the most familiar with all these numbers.
Well, we have a motion right now to amend the original motion this morning.
You're amending it again.
I don't know
No.
if it's amendable. What would happen is
We
if
have to
this
see how these go.
fails, I would say the way to get back to the 80% would be the First Amendment fails and the original motion fails. That would bring it to the 80%.
That's right.
Yeah. Any more discussion? Okay, let's vote on the amendment. So what we're going to vote on right now is to raise it to 100%.
Correct. Are you ready?
So,
And if that fails, then we're going to go back to the original motion this morning, which would be to drop it to 70%.
Correct.
So can you bring that up, Gene?
Yep.
Oh, there we go.
Michelle? The
No.
motion. Thank you. Motion fails 2-11 with yes votes from Hodak and Polachek.
Okay. Seeing that failed, now we're back to the original motion by Hastings to drop from 80 to 70%. Is there any further discussion on that? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote.
Michelle?
Yeah.
Was that a yes?
Yes.
To set library funding at 70%?
Yes.
Motion fails 3-10 with yes from Drobnik, Hastings, and Warco.
So having both those motions failing, or the motion and the amendment, we're back to the 80% right now.
correct. So then we don't usually,
No resolution.
I'm
How
sorry?
did a change like this happen with no resolution or anything that come forward?
It came out of executive.
This is dealing with money here.
Doesn't need a
Yeah.
resolution. Just needs a motion.
Okay.
Need a
No.
motion to approve the 80?
No, he's
No,
wondering why
no.
it's not a
It's already been-
resolution.
It's in the budget.
It's already in the budget based on the executive committee's recommendation. We voted on it there, not as a resolution, as a recommendation. Go ahead.
Right. So the way library funding works is there's a 5-year plan that is approved by the full county board, which was done May, I believe. And what that is it says that the county board can approve up to 100% of this. So through the budget process, that's where that number is placed. So that's why it's at 80, as the executive said, place 80% in it. It would be approved with the full budget. Rarely do we have these individual items that get discussed. It's good discussion. And so at this point in the budget, you could do this to any line item. You're choosing to talk about the library, that this is what was moved forward from executive to the board to create the final number. So that would be, it's not a resolution per item, it's a resolution as a whole. But the library plan is what allows that between anything between 70 and 100. Past practices, the libraries requested 70, we put in 70, there was very little to no discussion. This year they requested 100, that's what caused the discussion at executive and at the board level.
So at this time, you put in our computers a motion to keep it at 80? Is that what I'm seeing up on the
The
screen?
current motion is to approve the budget as presented, which is with the 80%.
Correct.
Is this appropriate time to approve the budget, or do we have more discussion with the budget besides the library?
I would have some discussion.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I want to go back to page 17, which is the glaring number in the middle, property tax levy.
Al, can you use your mic, please?
Oh, I just got to get closer. Okay, but you notice on 2021 budget, there was an increase of 12.83%. Okay, so now this year, the taxpayers are going to see on their little ticket 13.8% or
4.5.
4.45.
Neither.
Neither?
Neither. So taxes are not all, there's too many
Well,
variables.
it's just the county portion.
Yep. So because, and I don't know who revaled this year, Town of Elks next year. Did anybody do an open book reval? Any minute? Lake? So Town of Lake will screw up that number in a big way, right? So if Town of Lake's pie gets huge, Town of Elk, where I live, my percentage LC will not be 4.45 or 13.96. It might be -7 because the Town of Lake's going to take on a larger portion of the total amount.
Okay.
So I really hesitate to say using any of these numbers. This is your it's like a beacon saying this is where it's going if you all else was considered the same, but the problem is nothing's considered the same.
Okay, then I understand that now.
Yep.
Okay,
And
but
the
one other
schools.
thing is that on the 2021 budget, the highway construction debt was the culprit, and as is the 225 budget, the same note, highway construction debt. And I
Correct.
know that this came out of highway last year, and I was in favor of that because we wanted to catch up on the road construction, and that's a good thing because of the conditions of our road. But there was also there was 2 trucks that failed. 3 trucks that were taken out of service. So that's a major contributor to that kind of action.
The major increase in 2021 and 2025 were definitely the borrowing for construction. In between, we had all additional borrowing for construction because we went from $0 to 3.1 million since 2021. So if you add up all the changes, the difference would be if we did a truck. So we went from always paying cash for 1 truck to borrowing for 1 truck and paying cash for 1 truck. This year we added a piece of equipment, a yellow piece of equipment. Prior years we added other projects that slowly made it go up.
I'm an advocate of keeping things level so you don't have these highs and lows, and you.
Yeah,
you do
operationally.
that by having a long-term plan and budgeting accordingly.
Yep. So operational, if you look at the operation levy, that's pretty steady. We don't, I mean, the percentage is almost.
Well,
less than
operational
one.
wages and.
That's what we're held to.
Right.
We bring forward things like the construction, and that was approved. That's it's $3.1 million over several years. So that's where the levy's going up. It's not because we're doing more operations. We're doing more project-based initiatives, and each project costs more and more each time we do it. Equipment.
Right.
Yeah. So I think when I started here in 2011, our levy was $6 million. So it's doubled in 12 years, 13 years, which at a 7% rate, that's what it would, or a 10% rate, that's what it would do.
Thank you.
Well, just as an addition or side note to that, this equipment we're buying is because the highway department's equipment's just plain worn out because there hasn't been a long-term plan, or the plan that was there wasn't adequate.
It wasn't keeping up, correct? So those extra trucks we should have been buying in the 2010s through 12, 13, we were saying no to borrowing, no to trucks. Well, all of a sudden I got to do two. Same with the equipment. The graders are 20 plus years old. You don't need them every year. It's just they come due.
No one also thought the cost of trucks would go up $150,000 in a 3-year period, you know.
Braca.
I'd just like to make a statement to what the chair just said about the plan wasn't adequate. The plan was always there. The funding wasn't adequate. So just a correction on that one. And like Jordan said, who would have saw that a grader was going to go from 240 or 230 up to almost $500,000 over the course of 5 years? It's a position we're in, and we have to provide that service. So just speaking from another aspect.
I will agree. The plan has always been there. The funding wasn't.
And I want to say, when I first got on the board, I believe the first dump trucks we were buying were $172,500 roughly, and now they're $315 to $330. So
you're the
like,
culprit.
no, it's Joe left and Roger took over. Oh, Roger's not here. Sorry. Darn it, he left.
No, that's not the case.
No. But yeah, I mean, when you look at it that way, it's $140,000 or $150,000 increase that that's gone.
Well, the plan was to buy two maybe at a time, and we can only afford one.
Yes, exactly. So it's terrible. And it's not just that, it's every vehicle, it's everything, it's whatnot. So it's a tough pill to swallow everywhere.
Any further discussion on the budget? Motion on the floor to approve and forward.
So you're
public hearing.
approving, yep. So you're approving and forwarding to the public hearing a levy rate, or not a levy rate, a levy amount of $13,392,335. So that's the actual verbiage.
Last call. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote.
Gene, my computer quit, so I'll vote yes.
Not taking another nap again, is it?
Michelle, this is
Quit.
vote on approving and forwarding the budget to public hearing.
Yes.
You sound so happy.
I know.
Motion carries 12-1 with a no vote from Supervisor Hastings.
Okay, moving on. Any more updates from the administrator? Anything, say bug tussle or anything new there? Nope. Oh, I keep missing that. I'm sorry. Michelle, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I really don't have anything. I didn't realize I had it up. Sorry, people.
Okay.
Were you just giving us all a high five for passing that, or what?
Yeah, that's it. That sounds better.
Okay, we'll move on to committee chair reports, administration. Mr. Warkle.
Yeah. Administration has not met since the last meeting, so I really don't have anything to report. We do have a meeting scheduled for the 24th of this month.
Okay, moving along. Any questions? And you are going to put on the agenda this electronic meeting item, okay?
Gene will take care of that.
Okay, Executive Committee, at our last meeting, we heard reports from the treasurer, including taxes and REM, status of tax deed properties. We still don't know what, everybody's waiting for somebody to come up with an ordinance, so we can all at least have a basic diagram of how to word it and how it's going to work.
Yeah, there's a general outline that just was released from WCA. The issue with that is it's very, very gray, right? So we still have to come up with our procedure, and we're kind of letting other counties get a procedure going so that if there is a challenge to it, we know what to change before we get challenged. I'm hoping to have something by spring in all approved and done. We have 240 days to dispose of the properties that we have.
The WCA is helping work on this, but I kind of think nobody wants to make the first move.
Exactly. I know Clark County we're kind of following what they're doing, but they're also kind of the small, they may not get noticed if they're doing it not perfect to the new rules.
Okay, thanks. And then also at the executive, we talked about the Catkins contract in open session, and there was some representatives from Catkins that gave us their thoughts and needs and explaining their situation. We went into closed session and gave direction to Nick and the chief deputy as to how to proceed. And apparently it was successful because we have an agreement now.
Yeah. And we've also hired everybody on the Catkins board to do our future negotiation with the deputies. 'Cause they were tough. They were good. No, we will be working on finalizing the verbiage. Everything as processes is in place, and we have a tentative agreement on the money. We just have a couple steps to finalize that.
And for one, I'm hearing it sounds like
Everybody
good.
ended up happy. Like I said, I informed the chair. I think I informed a couple others, and
Mr.
everybody
Copley?
seemed to be happy.
When he's done.
I'm good.
You're done?
Yep.
Oh, where did you end up? I've heard different things. I mean,
Yeah, so our tentative agreement's 120 per year with a 4% increase over the next 5 years. They can't request any additional funding above and beyond that for those 5 years. Because we only put 100 in the budget and we were willing to use some of our ARPA funding that was unused, that's how we'll supplement the budget for the first year. So the 20,000, my goal is in next year's budget to budget 112, 113, which is half of that difference. Use a little bit more ARPA to get to the total, and then by year 3, be done using that ARPA funding. So we'll have to have a resolution to allocate ARPA funding to that.
what was the amount for this year?
120.
No, at 2024?
Oh, 46.
So we went from 46 to 120.
Yep, and they originally started at 200, so we met in the middle.
I mean, I imagine their costs have gone up, but it's because we're using it so much, or what? What's the reason for the?
Yeah, so the costs, we've been very lucky. They've done a lot of fundraising to do all the care of the animals, and they've been supplementing our costs quite a bit. So we average like 8 to 12 animals there at any one time, which then takes away from their ability to have animals and profit off of them. So we were a high consumer of their facility. They're at the point of they weren't able to keep up with the facility, so they have maintenance costs that were deferred. So we were lucky for the last several years. I looked at the surrounding counties. The only one that, and I would call them very, very unique on how they do it, would be Ashland. That doesn't fall within that $100,000 to $150,000 yearly cost to partner with their Humane Society.
So has our usage gone up that much over the last 5-10 years?
Yes, and our usage has gone up, but also the total number of animals in the community. I mean, I don't remember who was here, but we did question where do most of the animals come from. It's South Price County. We have a lot of abandoned animals down there. We have a lot of they're not considered breeders, but a lot of individuals that can't afford their spay and neuter and then end up with surrendered animals over and over and over. We did ask them to put some procedures in place, and they were already ahead of us on it, where if you go to surrender an animal, if this is your second time doing so, like puppies, you have to surrender the mom also, so you can't continue to put us in these situations.
Do they automatically spay or do any?
Yep. So that's probably their biggest cost, is in order to adopt them out, they have to be spayed or neutered.
Okay.
And there's no local clinics that have an affordable option. So they go to Merrill, Eau Claire, and somewhere else, and they take 18 cats and dogs at a time and go to spay and neuter, and it's like 40%, 50% less to do it offsite.
Yeah.
If they try to do them locally, it's like $200 to $300, and they can only do one at
Wow.
a time.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Hallstrand first.
Did we take cats off the contract?
Originally, we asked for that. Between the discussion, they brought it back on, and that's how they came down in price, as we met in the middle. So we originally offered $80,000 plus no cats. Through the conversation, we're going to be involved with cats no matter what. It's either going to become our problem because they aren't being dealt with, or it's going to kick our dogs out because they don't have the room for it. So it was discussed, but
But
it's
statutorily, we do not have a responsibility to take cats in.
right. So we've become more of a pass through with the cats. So, for example, you're correct. There's no statutory requirement to handle the cats. But what if, say, I caught a cat in my backyard, I could call the humane officer, and now they assist and say, cool, we'll take it, goes up to humane or to Catkins. If we said no and said, nope, we just need the dogs, we're just not participating, what would happen is I call Catkins, and Catkins could take the animal. So it's an inconvenience for me as someone who caught the stray, or they would say no, and then I either let it back out and it breeds, or I deal with it myself, or most likely let it back out, unless you're euthanizing.
Mr. Hastings.
Never mind.
Okay. All right, unless there's some more discussion, continue on a little bit with my report and then move on. Let's see, at the executive committee, we also talked about the library and voted to raise funding from 70 to 80%, which was forwarded to the full board today in the line item on the budget. We also voted on the resolution, which we passed today too, regarding road construction projects. Any questions regarding my report? Okay, we'll move on to Forestry and Parks, Buildings and Grounds.
Okay, so Josh basically for Buildings and Grounds gave us an update where he was at, getting basically prepared for snow to come. So he did fire up the new boilers and was tweaking some of that stuff and going through doing his fall PMs, and they've been working on the salt shed upgrade out for the highway shop. So that was basically it for Buildings and Grounds. Forestry and Park. So we had all the resolutions and stuff we did today, talked about the campgrounds, pretty good discussion there. Cleanup, we had some storm damage here in the last month or so out at the park and lost some trees, and I guess it smashed some of our brand new playground equipment, so.
Not the old stuff.
The old stuff?
Yeah.
Oh,
That'll get updated now.
that'll get updated now. Well, go ahead then. Yeah. Timber sales, I know Nick likes to shove it off, but I still have grave concern about the status of logging in our county. We're less than 50%. And if you look on your sheet there, in the past 6 years that's reported on there, this is the lowest we've ever been. So the 3-year average, we're well below that. And it's just not a good situation. Mills aren't taking wood and conditions aren't good there. So I'm just putting it out there. You'll hear me say that at every meeting. What else? We got the tractor repaired. We had some damage down at Concrete Park. I guess Paul Bunyan lost his head. So tree fell down on him. So I guess the tree won this one. So we're getting that
Just
all
ready for
fixed.
Halloween.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So really that's, he gave us an update on Steve Creek flowage. The engineer is proceeding with that, so we're getting further along with that project, as well as the Solberg campground expansion. He gave an update on that, where we stand and whatnot, so that was really about it. Question from
Mr.
Bob?
Kopish.
Yeah, that's Steve Creek. I see there's a shooting range going in.
Correct.
Is that in the same piece of property?
It's in the same piece of property, correct. It's just down from the dam. You go down the road a little bit and there's a gravel pit there that's on the same
Okay,
property.
is that
so
to the east?
would be to the southwest.
Okay, that way, okay.
But that's
all right.
actually coming out of Taylor County.
Taylor County,
The,
Westboro Sportsman's
yeah,
Club.
the,
is-
yeah, the
Oh.
Westboro
Yeah.
Sportsman's Club is
okay.
who wanted to be able to
Okay.
help put
All
that
right,
in.
thank
And
you.
we put in for some grants for that and whatnot. So, yeah, people down there are kind of excited about it. Was there one other thing Joe told us about? No, Joe's gone. He's on vacation. That was it for Forestry and Parks.
Okay.
But I did attend another meeting that I want to talk about now. I didn't know where to put it into. Alan and I went to the Great Lakes Rail Transit Commission. And you talk about a fiasco. I'm here to tell you I've never been at a meeting that was so disconglomerated. So it's all about Watco and they bought this track here and they don't want to spend any money because they don't have any customers. So it's the kind of the chicken before the egg thing. And Michigan is really pressuring them because they've got a copper mine that's wants to open up there and they want to haul their material on rail, but their rail's gone. It's eliminated completely. And forgive me if I give the wrong numbers, but the two bridges up in northern Ashland County, was it $110 million to replace those two bridges? And Waco says, at this time, we're not going to do it. We don't have no customers, and so they're aggressively looking for customers. We have two in Price County. He didn't say who they are, but it's Buer Sawmill and the Fifield Pulp Landing. It came out in conversation, but he said, I can't tell you exactly who they are, but we know that's who it is, and so that's good. So they will do some work on this line and going east and west there, but they said we can't afford to fix line when we don't have any customers. And that's one of them things where they say this is not economical to build it and they will come. So Michigan, the folks from Michigan would like them to turn these sections of rail over to the individual counties and let them manage it. I said, boy, I think if I went to Price County and said, we need $110 million to fix that rail so that somebody might use it, I probably wouldn't get elected again. So it was really, it was a meeting like I've never attended before, when everybody pointed their finger at the Watco guy and they were attacking him. And it's like, wow, you want to work with this guy? And if they could have put him on a cross and burned him, they would have right there. Am I right, Al?
I'll talk to it a little bit too.
Yeah.
Wouldn't there have been federal funding available when that rail got washed out because of the storms? And was it 16 or 17 whenever that happened?
And
again,
that was a
we
natural allowed
disaster,
a Canadian
right?
company to own this property and say, oh, we're not going to take your funding and we're not going to fix that line. So the problem came in here is that CN, operating out of Canada, has no interest in these sidelines anymore. And so when Watco bought, they went into an agreement to buy. What they really wanted was Oshkosh and Green Bay, and CN said, oh, you got to take all this crap with it. Basically, that's what the guy told me after the meeting. He said, that's how it all went down. We really wanted that Fox Valley rail line that CN had, but part of the agreement was they had to take all this other stuff, and there just is no business for them. And so it was really a interesting meeting, that was, I don't know what's ever going to happen to it. If this copper mine legitimately that they're talking in Ontonagon up there has got all this ore that they're talking about, I would think there would be a business case, but it was really, really interesting to hear some of the numbers. And the other thing he said, I don't know, Al, if you picked up on this, but he said all this rail is old and it's 80 pounds per foot rail. And for the National Transportation Board says it has to be 100 pounds per foot. So all the rail that we have here, in order to start really hauling stuff on it, all the rail has to be changed out. I mean, just ungodly amounts of money, and they're a private company. I mean, they're a private company. I mean, what would any of us do if it was our company? Spend the money and hope they come, or wait? I mean, it's really, so I don't look for anything to happen with rail anytime soon. So that was that meeting.
Mr. Al Buckstrom, do you have any thing to add?
As
long as we're on the subject?
I was gonna do it when I get to the land use.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Or should we just stay on that topic?
Let's just do that.
Yeah, okay. So Jeff was right. There were, they recognized a new member of this organization, which was Clark County. So Clark County all of a sudden discovered that they were being in trouble. And the big thing was that Watco embargoed, they used that word, and I thought, embargoed, which means that they really can't use the rail. So it's their point of view that the area is now less attractive. This is Clark County now speaking, because there was 2 extra representatives, Clark County plus all the people from the UP. And so industries are hesitant to come there because there's no rail service. That's Clark County. There's a line between Medford and Spencer, and Watco has no interest in repairing that line. So that's, let's see, they need 100 cars per year per mile. That's their business case. And in Clark County, it was 30 cars per mile.
Wow.
And that section there would be $2 million to improve it.
What was interesting with the Clark County thing is they had the city of Colby,
Oh, they had a lot
Dorchester,
There's an attorney there
and
too.
an attorney, and they swore up and down PCA closed their mill in Colby or wherever it is down there because Watco said they wouldn't haul traffic, and actually PCA moved that mill 2 years before Watco bought the rail. So
Yeah.
it was kind of debunked there that what they were saying wasn't necessarily all true.
So then moving to the UP, there were several county representatives there, and they introduced, there was a new organization that was called, it was the Snow Belt Transit Commission. And supporting this organization by county resolution was Gogebic, Ontonagon, Houghton, and Baraga counties. So the objective of that organization is to acquire any or all portions of the abandoned rail lines to preserve them for future use. I don't think that their intention there, Jeff, was to keep them as far as rail capable, but just to maintain them so that they wouldn't get lost. Right now it's grown up in forest. So once they understand that once lost, rails right of ways will be nearly impossible to restore. And the discussions, I might add, were very passionate in the room there. The other discussion that was, they kept it confidential, but there was the status of the lines from Park Falls, Mellon, Ashland. I'm not sure why, if there was a copper mine in Gogebic, why they would need to get Ashland involved. But anyway, it was the cost to repair the White Pine area to Mellon was, that 70 miles was 30 million. And that's strictly Michigan spent, and then another 20 million to get to Mellon. So the key to that whole thing is mining of the ore, the copper ore in the UP, and whether that's going to happen or not is not, we're not clear.
Okay. Anything further for forestry and buildings? We're done. Go to Health and Human Services. Ms. Hodak.
Health and Human Services met on October 9th. We had the usual, let me see, we talked about Joe Baraka being on the Council on Aging. Chippewa Valley Health Cooperative contacted Price County, talked to Chair, and what they're interested in is they had a summary of issues in the area facing right now accessing health quality healthcare and presentation of their project building and staffing new facilities and locations to be confirmed later. If you remember, the two businesses closed, the two hospitals closed, and so they looked at maybe hopefully taking over one of those buildings, and neither one of them were they weren't accepted as that. And so they said, well, we don't want to work on those buildings. They were pretty old and antiquated. So they're working on something, but they're not going to tell anybody where they're going to do it just yet. So they're requesting from the county some county input, assistance with funds if possible, and encourage the population to join the cooperative program and express interest in having a nonprofit hospital in the area. This was just all discussion, nothing more, just a presentation. Michelle Edwards gave the quarterly report of all the things that they have been doing. We had an ARPA funding. We talked about the playgrounds. We had an update from the playgrounds, and real quickly, Elk Lake Park update. The playground is completed, as we know, and open to the public. Inauguration took place on August 14th. Prentice Lions Club Park, they broke their project down into 3 phases, and the first phase of the project is almost completed. Park Falls Park, the playground is part of the project. Part of the project is to revitalize the downtown area of the city. They expect completion by the end of this month. Final touch-ups might happen next spring, but they are expected the park to be operational by the end of October. Be a little chilly out there, but it'll be good to have it. Aging and Disability, Sarah Soha gave a report, just a quick review. One concern is Adult Protective Services had a higher number of cases in Q3, something we keep an eye on. Aging, the 2025-2027 aging plan was presented and now, and the motion carried to accept it, and now we will have a public hearing, and that will be October 25th at Kennan, is that correct? I think it's in Kennan.
First at Ogama.
Oh, well, this is the minutes here.
Yeah, we've changed it since then.
That's right.
Yeah, it's at the Nutrition Advisory Committee.
Okay, October 31st. We'd have to have that changed in there. All right, in Ogama. Got it. There is a slight, on the behavioral health unit, there's a slight increase in the number of calls both during July and September. September is usually goes up when kids go back to school. There's kind of an influx on that one. We talked about the resolution for funding to cover full cost of mental health crises. Bing, 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 bing. And Sarah talked about her update was the last meeting for Michelle Edwards, who will be for Health and Human Services. She's retiring in January. The appointment of Tiffany Polachek as Public Health Officer. We made that motion to accept that. She's currently reviewing her qualifications. And Nick, you received a letter from the state from Paula Tran, right?
Yes.
Saying she passed, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So that was it. Our next meeting is November 13th. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Highway and Transportation, Mr. Polachek.
The crew completed shouldering on County Trunk Highway W and is marked for striping. They have chip sealed 30 lane miles on County Trunk Highway F, W, I, O, and C with assistance from Lincoln and Taylor County. They replaced signs on County Trunk D project. Removal of stumps and rocks on County Trunk Highway RR and culvert changes on County Trunk Highway C continue. The crew will be changing 3 large culverts and doing 3-foot road lifts for the U.S. Forest Service, which should take about 3 days to do. They also boom mowed County Trunk O and shouldered 1 mile on Skinner Creek Road for the town of Elk. Shop has begun installing plow mounts in preparation for winter maintenance. Due to last year's mild winter blade order is not needed this year. RFPs are due September 30th for purchase of plow and body package and installations. They will be mounted on the 2 Freightliner chassis we ordered from Boyer Truck. Airport has been busy on removing trees and brush that are growing tight to the fence. They have also been working on filling in holes in and by the fence that animals are using to get in the airport property. They have also been busy with mowing and fixing gates. Dams, the general status of all dams is good. Winter drawdown has begun on October 14th to be complete by October 19th. Job's Dam will need rehab, but is projected 10 years out. 10/21 is our next meeting date. That's our fall road tour. I would urge everybody that can go to sign up to go. You can still call the highway office and put your name in. Guaranteed to be well worth the price of admission. Are there any questions?
Hi, Larry. Hey,
Hi, Michelle.
So just curious, like I heard you say that the blades weren't needed, but I feel like we've been kind of beating a dead horse today with not buying stuff when stuff was cheaper. Would we be further ahead to buy a few and just have them there so they can use them next year and save some money?
I don't know. It might be something to discuss. But we have a lot of them piled up there. Are you going to be on the tour on Monday?
Well, if you want to take a detour down to Rantoul and see this really nice building, I could go with.
Be there at 7 a.m. at the highway shop. Or get someplace where Doug can pick you up with the school bus.
Oh, nice.
Any other questions?
I just have a comment. I was on Highway 8 yesterday in a county west of here who shall remain unnamed, and they were doing shouldering work on 8. Our crew does a much better job.
Thank you.
No, it wasn't. Okay.
Hey, I'm not sure what county painted the lines on W, but that guy definitely needed a energy drink to straighten him out. I will say unfortunately, that's some of the worst line painting I've ever seen. Joe's smirking, so I'm sure he noticed it, but I traveled that way on Saturday and I thought, darn, we put a beautiful road in and then got some crooked painter out here that's going to last for the next 30 years.
Okay. We'll move along here. Land use and UW extension.
We haven't had a meeting since the last reported on our August 29, and our next meeting is October 17th, just a few days from now, so I have nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. Law enforcement, Mr. Polachek?
I can tell you more after tomorrow morning's meeting.
So you have no report because you haven't met?
I have no report. Nick, do you have anything?
Not that I can think of offhand.
Our meeting was changed from September 26th because the sheriff and the chief deputy were out of town. So we'll have our meeting tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. That concludes the chair reports. We'll convene out of the committee of the whole. And the clerk is asked to have a little time here to make a comment.
Yeah, I don't know if it needs to be during the meeting, but I wanted to review the upcoming meeting schedules and things that we're going to need to be covered. So I don't know if you want to adjourn first or.
And then the chairs just talk to. Is that who you're looking for?
Well, just kind of in general, like a couple comments, yeah.
I suppose we don't need to record it, so you could adjourn, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, date of next meeting, November 12th, 9 a.m.